Welcome into our Wednesday show. I should say out of the gates and ready to go, but I won't step on my partner, Jonathan Hutton, with that. We are ready. Big show today. We got a lot of good coverage coming from you from SEC Media Days throughout the show. Greg Sankey, SEC Commissioner, will join us a little bit later. Jim Nagy, head of the Reese's Senior Bowl, will be on the show as well. And possibly Kentucky head coach Mark Stoops will be on the show. Big show today, and that's on top of Dan Dockich of Don't At Me and our fearless leader, OutKick President Clay Travis, joining us today. So much to get into, Hutton.
We've got a lot, yeah. Plus primary complaint today, too. Jam-packed. Right. Our goal each and every day, the next 3 hours, let's get there. 6 o'clock Eastern will happen fast. That's our guarantee. And Chad's hopes and dreams every day is to get to the 6 p.m. Eastern hour.
I'm a simple man, Hutton. You know, I just want a few things. I want a roof over my head. I want a warm bed to sleep in. Okay. I want 3 square meals a day. And I want 3 square hours on this show.
Just 3?
To fly by. Just 3. Just 3. That's it. These 3 hours to fly by. Maybe some snacks mixed in also with those three hot meals. But I'm excited about today's show. A lot to get to.
Hot Mike with Hutt and Withrow, and time for Scorched Earth. We got some hot headlines for you. Look at this. I mean, we're leading off with Hard Knocks, which won't even debut for weeks. And apparently, I mean, who could have predicted this? The Jets didn't want to be on Hard Knocks. And they're going to be, quote-unquote, uncooperative with HBO and Hard Knocks. Here is where the headline is twisted, though, Chad. When's the last time you actually tuned in to Hard Knocks?
I watched some of the Lions one a year ago.
Some of the Lions, and they're considered to be more of the cooperative. This will be more watched with an uncooperative organization than anything that anyone's going to point to about an organization that doesn't draw the attention that Aaron Rodgers and the Jets will. At the end of all of this, there won't be much to point to and laugh at because the ratings will be there. Because the NFL drives the ship on all things ratings.
Yeah, and I think it's all about how they handle it. So Adam Schefter is the one reporting this, that they've been uncooperative, and there's even been some like back and forth between producers.
Yeah, they don't want to show. They don't want to show players getting cut.
Yeah, which they haven't done that in a few years, anyways. They've kind of gone away from that, so that's not a big deal for HBO. If I'm HBO, though, I try to show some of those meetings taking place. They're filming on everything.
Yeah,
like I would tune in to see what Robert Saleh or Jets brass is saying to HBO about what they can't do and what they can't film. I'd want that out there if I'm HBO. Well, now, obviously, the Jets want nothing out there.
Well, they can't do that based on the right of first refusal that's allowed by each organization.
They get final cut, basically.
Yes. They see the day. They get to see the final copy, and then they tell HBO and Hard Knocks producers what to take out and what's airable. And that's every single year.
This is where it bothers me, though. And I know why the teams act like this, but there is still value to marketing and exposure. And even in the big bad NFL, there is value to marketing and exposure. And everyone wants to watch this. Everyone wants to watch the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. This is going to be a highly watched show for HBO. So just embrace it. At some point, you have to stop being so difficult and understand, look, you are the king of the mountain. You are the big bad NFL, and you are in big bad New York City, and now you got big bad, not inoculated Aaron Rodgers, coming in. So
refresh.
Embrace it.
Well, he will embrace it. He's embraced everything about this move.
Yeah, I don't.
He's going to want to show off the Jets and not the Packers.
I get tired of the whining and complaining about it, and just understand that people want to see this, and be okay with it, and don't run from it and act like you've got the nuclear codes that you're protecting at your practice for a Jets team that hasn't won anything.
Right. It's Robert Saleh who didn't want this at the plea of the organization to the league, but they had no choice. They were one of four that could be forced into it, and it was a no-brainer. And Chad, the other thing too, just to point out, Sauce Gardner is going to be all over this show, and many others. They've got so many different options here, where I think it's like you're saying, the over-the-head camera and the final chop that Saleh has final say over, and ultimately, you're not going to know about that. I have no idea who's been great and who hasn't behind the scenes.
Well, I just hope they don't turn it into something that I'm going to tune in. I'm going to tune in for the first episode, like a lot of people, because you want to see the Jet. But I don't want to leave the first episode saying, boy, this was clearly an uncooperative team they're filming because we didn't see anything. Because their final cut included nothing. I don't think it will. I hope it doesn't. I just wish I don't even want to read stories like this because there needs to be some level of gratitude at some stage or some point that you just embrace the fact that, yeah, we're sort of the top dog when it comes to attention now, and that's fine.
There's no gratitude because they're only one of 4 teams that qualify for the show.
Yeah.
If there's gratitude and they're the top dog, we'd be in Kansas City or Buffalo or Cincinnati right now. Possibly Baltimore.
But my point is they haven't won anything. So I would like some gratitude from this Jets team that has done nothing other than sign Aaron Rodgers, right? That they made the deal for him, so that's what we want to see. Just stop running from it. There's nothing that's going to be revealed that is going to be earth-shattering. We know that about these shows by now, so just
it doesn't affect the show. Yeah, you're right.
I understand that part of the reason that everyone has the salaries they do is because it's a very, very lucrative media deal. And part of that media deal is a deal with HBO and the HBO Sports to air a training camp, all-inclusive, all-access show as part of the deal. So just understand this is what you have to do. It's like the coach, Hutton, who hates, and you had to do this for a while, the coach who hates the halftime or postgame or pregame interview and doesn't want to do it.
I hated it. There's no reason to have the halftime interview
but
in
they
sports.
Also understand.
It sucks. But you get nothing out of it. It's filler. It's fluff. It's like, oh, look who we have access to. It doesn't provide anything to the broadcast.
Yeah, but they also understand they have to do it.
Half the time as coach, what do you want to work on in the second half? Nothing. They're going to give you a 5-second answer. Like they're obligated to do it, and honestly, the network does too, because if they don't do it, they lose it forever.
But they do it, and the Jets are doing it. They're going to have to do it no matter what. They can be as uncooperative as they want, according to Adam Schefter. The show will air, and there will be cameras around. There will be cameras on Arizona Diamondbacks games as well, but the Diamondbacks are now taking over their own television broadcasts. They've had issues with the company locally that was airing on Bally's, Arizona. Yep. And they've had a dispute that happened. This group, Diamond, I think Diamond Sports was the group, the regional network, they wanted to renegotiate the terms of a contract signed, went to a mediation, arbitration, something. They sided with the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks have now taken the rights back from them on the games. And if you are an Arizona Diamondbacks fan, for $20 a month, you can watch on MLB TV every game throughout the rest of the year, and the team will take over the broadcast.
And they're just like the Padres have also done this.
Yeah, and now if you are a cable subscriber that was getting the games before, my understanding is you can continue to see the games through your cable plan on some MLB channel.
Yeah,
it's basically like the MLB pay-per-view package, but it'll be
policies too. This would enable you, if you're a fan of the Diamondbacks or the Padres, you can watch them without those restrictions in place.
Well, and Hutt, you've brought this up before. You feel like this is going to be something that more teams, the Padres are doing this. They've taken over their own broadcast.
Well, and then outside
more
of that,
teams in Major League Baseball will take it in-house.
And then as you see the bankruptcy that's going on, half of the league roughly is through Major League Baseball now. They're now stepping in to run these broadcasts. And I think the deal is that the teams get 80% of the revenue they would have received based on the contract that is no longer being forwarded their way based on the bankruptcy filings or the threat of that with the payments coming in. That's where we're headed. And then I think we see the branch off of every individual team where Major League Baseball comes up as a group and they sell off the rights for Sunday Night Baseball, Wednesday Night Baseball, all that. Fox and doubleheaders on weekends, all of that, and you still get the a la carte during the regular season. That makes total sense. And it's a moneymaker for the local markets and the teams if you do it the right way. And it helps that the Diamondbacks are potentially in a race right now in their division.
I also keep thinking back to their streaming partner with Apple. And if any company has the money to do this and the wherewithal, could Apple just buy into Major League Baseball to a level with a media package that you could go there and watch your team and pay Apple for a subscription for your team only? But you get all of it through Apple. and it's run in conjunction with the teams, with the league, and there's some sort of either revenue share based on those subscription, or Apple's just paying Major League Baseball a ton. Because, I mean, that is a ton of inventory that we're talking about they'd be buying. Maybe there's something like that down the road. I think the a la carte style to this, where it's on linear TV, there's still national TV games also, and then you've got different teams taking over and other ones going with something else. That's probably more likely. And maybe Apple just says, hey, we want the Dodgers, the Yankees, and a few other teams. We'll just take those teams. And now you have to pay for an Apple TV subscription that's bonus that you pay more into to get those games.
But that model's not great for Major League Baseball's future because your top stars are going to be in those markets that will be on Apple. The Braves and Rays were on Apple TV Plus recently, right?
Yep.
And
unless you
had a subscription, you had the two top teams in the league, and no one could watch it unless you had a subscription to that. Like that's not great for the total viewing audience of what Major League Baseball needs to point to, and that's a younger audience. They've done a great job with the rules changes and things. If you have your top organizations, if you have the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, and the others can join. But if those three organizations are on Apple and that's it, imagine the backlash with the top games every year that a very small percentage of the national audience is going to be able to tune in for.
But in what we're talking about now with this, like what the Diamondbacks are doing, what the Padres, which could be a way to the future, it's the same type of deal. You're just going to have to pay through MLB TV to watch the game if you're going to stream any of those games. And I think that Braves-Rays series, talking about the next day they were on Fox. So they were nationally televised on Saturday. And then Apple TV is technically a national broadcast. If you've got Apple TV Plus, that's on Friday. I just think doing a lot of all of this is probably what's best for Major League Baseball. Having it exclusively in one place that you have to pay to stream for everything could be problematic, could also be very profitable. A move to the Pac-12 for San Diego State would be very profitable for the Aztecs program. So profitable, and they know this, that they sent a letter to the Mountain West stating their intention to leave the conference. The Mountain West took this as you are leaving the conference, not as some pre-approval to eventually leave the conference. And Hutt, now there's been back and forth about whether or not San Diego State is still in the Mountain West. We find out now that, in fact, they are still in the Mountain West.
And they held back, nearly $7 million on what they were owed this past year through a bowl money and then just the agreement with the Mountain West. They have 2 years remaining with the conference that we know about currently based on this announcement. If they wanted to leave the conference now, it would cost the university, it would cost the program $34 million to get out of the contract with the Mountain West. But they played their cards and gambled. They tried to toe the line or have one foot across the state line, and it worked out in their favor. They're still in their same conference, and they tried to get into the Pac-12, but with the news coming out that the Pac-12 with the university presidents and the chancellors agreeing on a grant of rights deal that's already been negotiated behind the scenes, now the TV distribution, the streaming distribution is said to be announced soon. That according to Heather Dinich yesterday in her report with ESPN. San Diego State had nowhere to go but with the Mountain West, and it's good for them that they had their name ballied about. And it's also good news for the Pac-12 that they're not losing Colorado. That's what really this is about. If Colorado was going to the Big 12, San Diego State would be in the Pac-12 right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned it in that, but great news for the Pac-12 that they are coming to some agreement on a new media deal that they desperately needed. And if it is in line, as reported, with Big 12 and ACC, this will calm the waters big time. We're not going to be talking about, is Memphis going to be the next Big 12 edition, or is San Diego State
is the Mountain West going to become
decide
Pac-12?
Between the Big 12 and the Pac-12?
Yeah.
Those headlines kind of go away if, in fact, this media deal is announced and is as good as has been reported. Northwestern is not great at reporting, and they're certainly not great at reading reports. Now they've announced, through Michael Schill, their president, that they are going to launch not one, but two more External investigations. Hutt and Northwestern, they have tripled down on this now. They did a 6-month-long investigation where they came back and they decided their head coach, Pat Fitzgerald, should get a 2-week in the middle of summer suspension. And then after backlash to that, they waited 3 days and came back and said, oh, sorry, we were wrong. He's fired now. And now they're going to say, so what we're going to do to remedy all of this is we're going to launch 2 more external investigations and probably do an equally bad job reviewing the reviews that are happening. This is much ado about nothing at this point for Northwestern.
Well, what
Either
they're doing,
lead and manage your department or don't.
well, what they're doing, so they're breaking this external investigation into 2 parts. One is to detect issues and how to do that moving forward if they arise. The other is to check out the athletic department and the culture there compared to the academic guidelines and the standards that are in place at Northwestern. More or less, and this is, they've fired Pat Fitzgerald, they've also fired their baseball coach. They're coming up with their job description for the next hires, is what they're doing. To my knowledge, there's no external investigation on Michael Schill and his handling of this. And I don't know how much backlash there was. All I heard was a bunch of players and coaches coming to the defense of Pat Fitzgerald. And then all of a sudden it went from 1 player and another player backing him up to then 11 players that were coming out saying this was going on. Now you've got a running back also discussing, a former running back. There's a lot going on here. Schill's the one that needs to be, looked at with the handling. Dan Dockich next.
Pat Fitzgerald has been fired. Pat Fitzgerald, the beleaguered, the weirdo, I guess, or his weird players, has been fired by Northwestern University. And the Northwestern children, the players, are not happy about it. They are not taking it well. Well, I ask you, Northwestern players. In fact, I just put out a video to Northwestern players that are mad. And they're mad because, well, the old coach. The old coach got blank canned because, well, the players decided it was a good idea to get naked, do naked crawls, naked claps, naked soap up themselves in front of the shower and make players run through because the players of Northwestern really are perverted. I mean, I'll never understand it. Now I got guys saying, well, Bobby Knight, you guys hazed just in a different way, yelling and screaming. Yeah, you're right. We did. Tough. You don't like it? So what? But we never did the nudity thing. We never did the sexual assault thing. We never did the stuff, hey, we're going to slap you and dry hump you. At some point, the players, don't you agree, the players of Northwestern got to look themselves in the mirror and say, you know what? This is kind of on us. You know what? We caused a lot of this. You know what? We shouldn't have done that. Now, every time I see a Northwestern player from now on, I'm like, yeah, you're a weirdo. Used to be every time I saw a Northwestern player, I'd be like, man, you're a tough dude. You played for a tough coach, played for a high-end academic institution. I'd hire you in a second. Now I'm like, yeah, you got a bunch of weirdos running around there. Now I'm like, what in the hell are you doing there in the locker room at Northwestern? And I told you yesterday that this firing was coming because of this one reason. When you have to have outside people monitor your locker room because your players are perverts, because your coach allows it, because it's a culture of somehow, some way naked hazing. And no one's denying the hazing, by the way. So it's not like I'm speaking out of school. Sure, Fitzgerald, whatever, is a great dude. Sure, he is the face of Northwestern. I would argue he's the most important figure in the history of Northwestern athletics. Nobody's not saying good dude. But he did what a lot of dumb meatheaded coaches do. He got on his little mount. He's got his little pillar. He's got his little kingdom. And on top of the kingdom is him. And he got to thinking he was untouchable because no coach with any common sense would allow that in this day and age. I don't know what they were doing back when Bear Bryant was having guys out at camp. I don't know what they were doing when Kay first started. I don't know what they were doing at Indiana when Knight first started. I only know what I've been involved in, and it's never involved dry humping other men or nudity. Just saying. In the locker room. Naked. On my team. Never. Anywhere, actually, but never. Used to give you a ball tap once in a while out in public just to say hello. But I got to tell you, it's just the weirdest thing. And none of these players are taking any accountability. You know what they're doing? They're doing the Biden strategy. This went from the Bob Knight strategy of round up all the players, ex-players, whoever, and talk great things about this strong man. Look at his chin. Yeah, that's what they do.
We're back. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow on this Wednesday, live from our downtown Nashville 6th and Peabody studios with Old Smoky Moonshine and Yeehaw Beer. He's Jonathan Hutton. I'm Chad Withrow. And we're joined now by Dan Dockich, host of Don't At Me on the OutKick Network, with us now, coming to you live from Indianapolis. Dan, how are you on this fine Wednesday?
Oh, man, I am beautiful. It is a nice day. I took my dog for a walk. I lost a ton of money yesterday, licking my wounds on the golf course, but everything is good.
Dan, do you buy the reports from Tom Curran up in New England that Bill Belichick is on some sort of hot seat going into this year with Robert Kraft? And if so, should there be any pressure on Bill Belichick?
Yeah, I think there should be. I do. And it's unfortunate, but that's the world that we live in. I get it. He's living off of the equity that he built up with Tom Brady. But let's be honest, since Tom Brady has been gone, and that's what makes it so difficult. You can point for Bill Belichick to a specific event that has caused, if you want to call it his decline, I would call it him being back to being a mediocre coach. And that event is getting rid of Tom Brady, in his mind, a year early, which is what he's done. You can point to that specifically. And, you know, I think you guys said it, and I said it at the time. When Brady left Belichick, we were going to be keeping score, right? I mean, that's easy to do. And the score is very one-sided. Look, it's like anything else. In coaching, there is always, every coach that I knew would always say, look, Indiana fired Bob Knight. They'll fire you. Now it's, hey, when Northwestern filed Pat Fitzgerald, their main guy, they'll fire you. I can see where people are going to say, wait a second, you know, you're great with Brady. We appreciate all you did, but we got to be better than this. Free agents aren't coming, apparently. We got to be better. And, I would say, I'm not saying he's going to get fired if they don't make the playoffs, but I would say that he's certainly on a warm seat, yeah.
Dan, you mentioned Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald there, and they had the issue with Jim Foster, the baseball coach also, who they hired from West Point. So I think his style may have been a little bit different when he got there compared to what they were accustomed to. But I see that they're going to launch 2 more external investigations into the program, and I'm thinking, didn't we just have a big investigation? And at the end of it, you initially determined that Pat Fitzgerald should have a 2-week suspension, and then you fired him after the fact. So what's 2 more investigations going to do?
Well, what it's going to do is it's going to try to appease the 2 lawsuits that were just filed, and more to come. Ben Crump has been hired by 8 of the Northwestern football players, total of 16 athletes, including softball and baseball. And Ben Crump is hired for one reason and one reason only, and it ain't to settle. It's to be very public. It's to be very racial. It's to be very demonstrative and make a scene, and that's exactly why he was hired, and that's exactly what he's going to do. So if you're Northwestern, you're scrambling right now. You're trying to check out, what did we miss? Where did we miss it? And who missed it? So you're going back, and you're investigating, because there's already been 2 John Doe lawsuits file. One alleged, I think it was sexual abuse, and the other threw the racial discrimination in there. And it involved more than just football. It involved baseball. So get ready for it. You know, I think it was you and me, Chad, on Monday. We're like, well, why did they fire Fitzgerald? I think we're seeing it. I think we're seeing they fired Fitzgerald to get out in front so that when these lawsuits started piling up, at least they could say, hey, look, we fired the head coach. Now, I'll never understand how you can fire the head coach and you have a broken culture, but you're going to keep the assistants there. That is something that it boggles my mind. But I would imagine that there's going to be more heads to roll. It may be the AD. I don't think it's going to be the president. He just got there. The AD's only been there a couple years. But that's why you're seeing another investigation, because lawsuits, they are a-coming, and there's already been 2.
Dan, I'm eager to hear from the current players. If it's a culture issue, then it happens right now with players that are currently on the roster who haven't left.
Yeah, that's a tough one on them, right? I mean, I guarantee you
Same
they're
coaches are there too, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I guarantee you, I would be lawyered up.
Yes.
If I were a player and I had nothing to do with nothing, I would certainly be talking to an attorney, because I don't want to get swept up into this. And I'll tell you exactly what that attorney would be telling somebody. That's shut your mouth. You know, don't say a word. Anything you say can and will be used to incriminate you, even in a civil suit. So shut your damn mouth, go about your business, and we'll worry about it if and when somebody decides to contact you. So, you know, in a perfect world, you would be hearing a bunch of players, current players, and a bunch of coaches defending it, but their silence is deafening, and it's not deafening as an indictment of what went on. It's deafening because you know what you don't want to be? You don't want to be subpoenaed. You don't want to be called to a witness stand. You do not want that even a little bit. You want to simply go about your business, weather this storm. And you know what? If you do have options, here's the tough thing. People always say, hey, look, why don't you just transfer? Well, it's not that easy. There's a human element. You're going to one of America's great schools, and you probably enjoy it. You know, and all of a sudden you're going to do what at this time? You're going to leave? Where are you going to go? You're going to go from Northwestern to Ball State? Are you kidding me? Think about 5 years after college what the degree means. And that is to disparage Ball State when it is compared to Northwestern. I'm sorry, most schools don't meet up to the reputation. So it's not as easy. Now, if I were a recruit and I saw one just took off, I'd be saying, hey, look, hold on here a second. We're not coming until this thing gets straightened out, particularly if I was the father of a recruit and my son had options. That would be my advice that I would give him. But if I'm a player, I'm a coach, I'm just putting my head down, shutting the hell up, listening to my attorney, and hoping that nobody contacts me.
Until the next coach does, because they're not going to be retained a year from now. Dan Dockich with us here on the Hot Mic with Hutt and Withrow. Dan, so discussion recently about the expansion, the potential expansion of the NCAA tournament. We know that's going to be put on hold. It's not going to expand anytime soon past of where it is. And I say soon, for the foreseeable future on the horizon. It's going to happen, though. However, I'm reading a CBS report that says they talked to and polled 100 Division I basketball coaches. 97% of them said they don't want to see the tournament expand. Are you surprised by the 97%?
Yeah, I think they're idiots. I do. I mean, whenever anybody wants to criticize me, they say, yeah, you won, but yeah, you won a league title, but you didn't go to the NCAA tournament. Those 97% are fools. That'd be like 97% of college football coaches saying, hey, look, we don't want the college football playoff expanded. Let me tell you, guys are going to get fired with really good records when they don't get into the college football playoff. That's just what's going to happen. So if you're at a mid-major level and you're saying, hey, look, I don't want this thing expanded, you're a fool. Now, I've always argued, look, everybody, for the most part, other than the Ivy League, you're pretty much in the NCAA tournament, because once your conference tournament starts, it is your NCAA tournament, meaning you keep winning, you keep progressing, whether it's the first game of your conference tournament, championship game, into the NCAA tournament. I've always argued, and nobody seems to understand it, that everybody, Ivy League does not have a conference tournament, but everybody is actually in when we start tourney week or when we start champ week or whatever the hell ESPN calls it. But if you don't want this, you're a stone idiot. And you're right, it is going to happen, and it should happen. I mean, why not? I mean, let's be honest. People say, well, you know, when it was 32 teams. That was perfect. Then it went to 64 teams. That was my senior year in college, and people complained about that. And next thing you know, Villanova beat Georgetown, and no one was complaining about anything. They were just talking about how great the games are. Look, let's be honest. If you expand the tournament, you're going to have more great games. It's not like football where, the powers to be are going to crush the TCUs that get in there. It's not like that. You know that. In basketball, hey, look, guy gets hot from three. Next thing you know, Wofford's beating Duke, or Eastern Michigan's beating Duke, or Cleveland State's beating Indiana, or name an upset, whatever upset you want to name. So it's going to happen. It should happen. I swear to God, if you're a college basketball coach and you don't want it, you're a damn fool. Or you're at Kentucky, or you're at Duke, or you're at North Carolina, where you pretty much figure you're getting in anyway, except, of course, North Carolina this year.
That's what I was thinking, Dan, is who did they poll? Did they pull John Shire?
Well, they said 100, though. It's tough to find 100 D1 coaches and have it be 97%.
But, I mean, to your point, you coached at Bowling Green, right? If you go find the coaches at that level or the high major coaches that got fired for not getting to the tournament enough, which we can sit and debate whether the high major coaches should be complaining at all, but I'm willing to bet the fired coaches of America would all vote, yes, extend the tournament, because that could have saved my job if I made 2 more tournaments.
Hey, let me explain something to you. In 2002, I think we went like 24-6. 3 of those losses were to Kent State. Kent State went to the Elite 8. We lost to Kent State in the MAC championship game, tied at half, up in the second half, and they did what they did with Antonio Gates. Let me explain to you how big that is. Just to get in the tournament, the Indiana job, I would have had it full time if I got Bowling Green into the NCAA tournament. It's that big for mid-major coaches. It legitimately is. And I knew it at the time. Like, it wasn't like it didn't sneak up on me. I knew it. Only one team was getting in. Although maybe, I remember going to the commissioner and the head coach at Kent going, hey, why don't you guys throw this game? You guys are going to get in the tournament anyway. Let us get in the tournament. It's better for the league. We get 2 teams. Help a brother out here. But no, it's that big, and there's no chance. I mean, 100 coaches. All right, so there's probably 100 Power 5 or whatever you call it in basketball, including the Big East coaches. Yeah, they probably all said, no, we don't want it extended. But if I got to tell you, if I'm at St. Bonnie or I'm at Rhode Island, I want that damn thing extended. You kid Butler right now, I want that thing extended.
Power 5, if on the expansion, if you go by the way they currently grade teams and how they get in through the committee, and again, who knows, the entire Big 12 would have made the tournament this year. So, of course, the Big 12 coaches should vote yes for expansion, but apparently they didn't.
Right. Yeah, well, I don't get it. I honestly don't. And you know what? Good for them. They're morally upright guys. They're full of crap. You know what? Everybody now, I had a coach tell me this. He goes, look, I don't vote on what I really believe. I vote on what looks good in the newspaper because I assume every vote I make, public or private, is going to be in some type of article, some type of blog, and made into some type of deal. Yeah, look, 97% said they don't want to extend it. All right. Brad Stevens once told me this, and I use it almost in every aspect of media in my life. Who ranks the rankers? Meaning, who's giving us that information? Who's telling us it's 97%? Yeah, okay, CBS Sports, my ass. They're the ones that run the tournament. I ain't buying it.
So, are you buying what the running backs of the NFL, the top-level running backs, are selling right now? Because there's been a bit of a running back uprising where they've all joined together and said, we're not going to stand for this devaluing of the position anymore and just being discarded. And that is what's happening. There's no arguing that what they're saying is true about how that position is viewed now, Dan.
Well, the rules are set up that way. The rules are set up to pass the ball. So who are you going to play? You're going to pay the guy that throws the ball. You're going to pay the guy that catches the ball. You're going to pay the guy that rushes the guy that throws the ball. And you're going to pay the guy that can defend the wide receiver that catches the ball. Hey, look, I mean, I got a kick out of Jonathan Taylor. He put a tweet out that talked about, if you work hard, blah, 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 and how he uplifted the Colts or his organization. Yeah, he hadn't uplifted nothing. He's been terrific. He's a nice kid. I felt bad for him getting caught up in that. But when he got here, First year they were 11-5. Great, means they had a pretty good team. Since then, 9-8, and then 4-12-1. He hadn't uplifted anything. So look, I go back to Walter Payton, my all-time favorite player. Bears were always awful. Then what'd they do? They got a defense. They did. They got a heck of a defense, and they won the Super Bowl. I've always paid attention to that. O.J. Simpson, never been to the Super Bowl. Isaiah, whatever his name is, Panchenko or Panchenko, he's a star with Kansas City. He's been in the Super Bowl. I'm just saying it is what it is. You're worth what the market says you're worth. Running backs can be devalued. Seems like there's a ton of them that are pretty good. None more special than the other, I guess. I don't know. Barry Sanders, never been in a Super Bowl. Colts had Edgerrin James, didn't get to the Super Bowl. Colts had frickin' Eric Dickerson, never got into the Super Bowl. They found a versatile guy, Joseph Adai. Guess what? They win the Super Bowl. It is what it is. I tell you what, let those running backs go into the business world. Let them guys go into the world of sales and see how it works out for them. They're complaining that the thing is $10 million, the franchise tag. Hey, go in the real world. See if you can make $10 million. You better be the CEO of Eli Lilly, for crying out loud.
Dan Dockich, he lives in the real world, and he lives with us once a week, and he lives every day, every weekday on Don't At Me on the OutKick Network. Dan, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for everything, fellas. Have a great afternoon.
Hit them straight. Win that money back.
Absolutely. Dan Dockich.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the kind of it is what it is sometimes overplayed, but and we've talked about that's exactly where it is right now in terms of the market. Maybe it's cyclical and it cycles back in favor of the running back position again, but who knows? May not happen. Also, something that will happen though is every Wednesday on this show we get fired up. We go true scorched earth next with primary
Pissed
complaint.
off for greatness.
Primary complaint is next. This is Hot Mike with Hutt and Withrow.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I just think the way Anthony Bass handled this was so sloppy.
Oh, I think it's perfect.
And what he reposted,
he bent the knee and bowed. He was going to catch the ceremonial first pitch.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
When you're behind closed doors, when you're talking to plant managers, when you're having meetings, when you're with the team, was there an acknowledgement of any of this, an acknowledgement of the situation, the boycott, and then the doubling down about moving away from the fratty image?
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people. I'm pissed off about this.
I never did it before in my life, but Trump is being cheated. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
We are back. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network on this Wednesday, live from 6th and Peabody Studios, downtown Nashville. Old Smoky Moonshine, Yeehaw Beer. He's Jonathan Hutton. I'm Chad Withrow. This is Wednesday afternoon at a very special time in a very special place because it is our time to complain. Primary complaint is now.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week.
You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling. Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Hot Mic's primary complaint.
Guys, my primary complaint this week. News media teases that if true, going into break, would require top of the show coverage, not C block BS. For instance, the supplement in your cabinet could cause you to die. What is it? That's next. That's bullcrap. Because if it were true, you'd lead with it. A defect in a recall that's going to prevent you, or you shouldn't, go pick up your kid from ball practice during this commercial break. No, not buying it. And going back to just the weather, Chad, that we've been sitting through, you may need to get to your safe place. We'll tell you where that is next. Sorry, not sticking around for that. Give me the headlines. Tell me what's important and what's not, and not just try to continue to feed us stuff like we're sheep. So many of us are. I'm going to hammer this home. I'm tired of the crap because there's a lot of it out there. That's my primary complaint.
It feels like you should be levied a fine from the FCC if you say, find your safe place. We'll tell you where. In this tornadoes, and if you're in its path after this 3-minute break.
The way it's going,
that should be a finable offense.
The way it's going right now is we have found a cure for a very specific type of cancer, and they're not going to tell you.
Yep.
That's
it's a mess.
The entire show is that.
It's a mess. You know what else is a mess? Conversation lingerers, or not knowing how to get out of a conversation in the appropriate amount of time.
Are you thinking about something in particular?
We are over at SEC Media Days, and I can't think of a specific interaction, but there's been a few.
Oh, I can.
There's been a number of interactions, and we've got a package coming in. I just saw a number of interactions where, and look, I will be the first to say, okay, there is a specific art to this about getting in, getting out, being polite, being pleasant, not being offensive to someone, not seeming rude, while also moving along and continue to move through a room or get to where you need to go. I probably err on the side of being curt, that I kind of get it going quicker and shake hands and walk away. But what I cannot stand is the person who does not understand when the conversation has ended and will just sit and stare and allow for awkward silences and then start a new conversation instead of just, okay, our time together and our pleasantries are over. We will now shake hands. You will go about your business. I will go about mine. It is time to talk to new people and or get about our work that we're doing here. This happens far too often where someone will linger around a conversation for too long. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're probably that person. So be mindful of it. Be a little bit quicker. Allow people to get about their day. And don't linger too long in a conversation. This is my primary complaint.
Yeah, Greg Sankey.
Yeah.
That's what Chad's saying.
Yeah.
Greg
Sankey, who will join us coming up.
Yeah.
Lingered for far too long. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
We have a packed house today for primary complaint. In the house is Haley Caranilla from OutKick. Haley, welcome to primary complaint. Is this your debut?
This is my primary complaint debut, yes.
Oh.
Do you feel honored?
I feel honored, but I feel like my primary complaint isn't good enough for the debut. But my primary complaint, at least this week, is sitting down at a restaurant and not having salt and pepper on the table already, because I hate nagging for things. I know that I would be a terrible waitress, so I don't like asking for things, but I want salt and pepper readily available to me.
That's a really good one, and I can't think of many places, unless you go somewhere really nice.
Yeah, but I don't.
That wouldn't have it on the table.
The nicest restaurant ever, I want salt and pepper on the table. You can come around with the big fancy fresh pepper later, but I want
and it's going to take forever.
I think that
regular old salt and pepper.
I think though the nicer the restaurant, they see it as an insult if you ask for salt. So putting it on the table would be them suggesting that they haven't salted it properly.
Correct.
So then they're almost saying,
kiss.
it's like we're undercutting ourselves here. Because at this fine establishment, Haley, we would never undersalt our food, so you'd never have the need for more salt. So why put salt on the table? It's perfect as served to you. That's the message they're trying to send to you.
I beg to differ.
Chad, do you think Davey Hudson, who joins us from SEC Media Days, has been on a date where they didn't have salt or pepper on the table?
Probably.
This will tell us the level of restaurant.
I'm not even that observant to. I'm trying to think. Like, I seldom even grab the salt or the pepper. That's not really. That's a good question. I'll have to do some digging.
When you take your date to Denny's, what is the salt and pepper situation
Chick-fil-A has
there?
this, right? It's already there.
I think they have multiple salts on the table at Denny's normally.
I'm more of a Waffle House guy because you're always within distance to just yell at the server to just send you whatever they need. Guys, I'll be honest. I'm kind of not in the mood to complain because there was some great news that came by not too long ago, but my primary complaint for today is when you're in between belt loop notches. Currently been running around here for SEC Media Days, and it's like, am I on the second loop or second notch or the third notch? I've been having to go back and forth, just kind of depending on did I just eat lunch or use the bathroom. It's been a real hassle. I've been struggling, and that's definitely my primary complaint.
Do you think in walking around Radio Row, Davey, that you're losing grip on the notch, like you're actually losing weight, burning calories, or is this more of
which direction are you
hitting
going?
The buffet too many times?
No, I haven't been eating much. I've actually been drinking way too much coffee. I'm probably going to crash any moment, to be honest.
That's nice. What was the good news you received? Can you share it with us?
Oh, yes, I can. So I don't know if you guys have heard this, but Creed is reuniting. So that's huge.
With
now
arms wide open.
I have already been in the OutKick account on Twitter and DM Scott Stapp to ask him to come on the show. Yes. So, I mean, this is just big across the board. I mean, this is the #1 story in the world of music right now. So hopefully we'll be able to get more details on that.
I think Tupac's story is a little bit larger than.
Yeah, we'll get to Tupac. There's plenty of time to get to Tupac.
I mean, we hit it yesterday, Chad.
Yeah,
so, I mean, it's on there again today, but we did hit it yesterday.
We'll hit it again for sure. Davey, appreciate it. Have fun over there on Radio Row, and we'll hopefully be chatting with Mark Stoops, Kentucky head coach, a little bit later.
Tell Saban we said what's up.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Saban.
I'll pass that along.
Speaking of Saban, I'll go ahead and say it because I just don't care.
Go ahead.
Davey tried to get Alabama people on the show today, and Alabama's SID basically looked at Davey and said, "Oh, you're with OutKick?" Absolutely not. Will we put anyone on a show with OutKick? And I'm guessing it's because of things I said about Jermaine Burton and their handling of that, and probably things we've written and said about Brandon Miller. So the lesson here and the moral is, first off, with Jermaine Burton, don't hit women, and then also don't not punish someone after they hit a woman on camera exiting a field if you don't want to be criticized by someone. And the whole Brandon Miller situation is a complete mess also. That's my message to Alabama. Also, I don't think Alabama did much with anyone today, not just OutKick.
Well, that's par for the course.
They don't really play ball with other people because they're very high and mighty about things like that. Haley, I would like to ask you about this while we have you on here. Davey talking about the belt loop situation. Yes. I feel like this is a real epidemic with the ladies because women – now, guys are wearing tighter fitting clothes now. You know, clothes are a bit more, the fit's a bit tighter.
Are you about to call them fat or bulimic? Which one?
No, I think that because women's clothing is just so tight, like I look at women's clothing and I think, man, depending on the day, I'm not fitting into that. Right? Like if I had like a heavy meal the night before, right? I don't know that I'm going to fit into those pants or that top or whatever it is. It's got to be an issue, right?
Yes. I have certain items of clothing that I can only wear in the morning, but then like after lunch, I'm like, yeah, that dress isn't going to look the same.
How pissed off are you when you put on, because I've done this where you like put on the pants that are a little tighter and you like have a little bit harder time buttoning it, or, you know, it's a little tighter than usual. And it just makes me mad. I don't even want to try them on, even if I think that they're not going to fit properly.
Chad wants the
because
flu
it
to be able to fit into them.
makes me angry. Yes, give me food poisoning, please, so Chad, I can fit into these damn jeans that I want to wear again. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think the size of women's jean pockets would make you even more angry if you needed to fit into those. They are absolutely for decoration only. You can't fit a cell phone in them. You can barely fit. I had a pair of leggings. They have the tiniest little pocket. I could barely fit my credit card and my ID in them. So stupid. They're not meant for living. I don't know what they make women's clothes for, but they don't fit women. I'll just say that.
But women decide what looks good and what doesn't. Like if it doesn't fit the card, if you can't put a credit card in the side of your Lululemons, I don't know why they're so popular.
I'm going to become a fashionista, and I'm going to create practical clothing for women.
Well,
wow.
the other thing
that's going to be the sell. Ladies, these clothes may not look the best, but it's going to have a pocket big enough to put a cell phone in, and you're going to love that about them.
Where I want to start, and I think this is universal across the board. An extra large should mean an extra large. A large should be a large. Why is there not standard sizing?
That is
where
such a
if
great
I'm wearing
point.
a size 10 shoe and I order it online as a 10, it's way too small and I have to go up to the 11 to return it. I hate this. And
16-ounce drink is a 16-ounce drink everywhere.
What is
right? It's in a 16-ounce container.
Yeah.
So how can we not?
Not need a size guide.
Clothes are essentially containers for the body.
Should not need
so
a size
how can
guide.
we not get a universal size system that everyone adheres to? And if they don't, there's some sort of governing body that will kick them out of being able to sell clothes because it does not fit with the universal sizing system. Haley, why? Tell us, please. I know you have an answer.
I don't have an answer, but Americans usually do everything opposite of everyone else. So even if we could get like an American system that's just all one, and then maybe we have to deal with European sizes if you order clothes from somewhere overseas, but at least, like, can we just get on the same page here?
Yeah, but they're all being made in China or Taiwan.
That's the problem.
Or Indonesia.
I think it's the Chinese that's messing up the system because they're not going to play by our rules. So if it's made in America, I think you could get a uniform sizing system, possibly if everything was manufactured and made in America. But when you go overseas for products, they're going to do whatever they want.
I don't buy that.
We won't cheers to China.
You think that they'll play ball with that too? And they can do the same.
I think certain companies have their own measurements and sizes, and they were not. They've got to be high and mighty, so their extra large actually is like a men's medium.
Well, like here's an example, like Nike shoes. To me, Nike shoes always run small. I wear a 12.5,
or do
sometimes
the others
13.
run large?
I would absolutely need a 13 to be able to fit into.
But
Nikes.
I have no idea if Nike's on point or not because the others could just run large. I want to know what size 10.5 is.
This is our new segment on the show called Ask a Girl, and we just bring Haley on and we just ask her a question that only a girl could answer. And
do you order all your stuff online?
Yeah, I very rarely shop in person. I order everything online, and
I'm terrified by this.
I'm pretty good at going through the size guide and like figuring it out. Sometimes I really miss the mark, but for the most part, I don't have to send things back.
Chad's pretty standard on. I feel like you grab your large or extra large and you're good to go.
Yeah, but there are. I mean, to your point, like some shirts, most shirts I wear a large.
I know. Yeah.
And then some brands, like the large is, I'm showing nipples when I wear the large, and I got to go extra large, right? Because it's a little tight, and I'm not trying to do that.
Is this a medium?
Yeah. So, yeah. Sir, I did not ask for a medium. I asked for a large this go around.
The only thing large was the large meal. Is that what you said the night before?
The large combo that I had the night before. And yes, I did supersize that combo. Haley, thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you for participating in our first ever Ask a Girl segment on the show. Maybe we will return to this topic, this segment, at another time. Hutt, we got into a lot earlier today with Greg Sankey. We sat down with the SEC commissioner, and we even asked him about his power, if he's cognizant of that power, and does he have any interest in being the czar of college sports? Because if he wanted the throne, he could snatch that throne right now. Does he want it? What does he think about NIL and the future of college sports? Greg Sankey will tell you. The SEC commissioner joins us next. This is Hot Mike with Hutt and Withrow.
Of male advantage plaguing women's sports, it only recently came to light, I feel like, for so many, including myself. I was really only became aware of this when I was slapped across the face with it in regards to Leah Thomas. But as you alluded to, this is something that you had experience of. You were well ahead of your time. I mean, 43 years ago, you saw this. And so would you be able to touch on what that experience looked like competing against the East Germans?
And we would have East German athletes turning up to things like even like the Olympics, and we'd never, ever seen them before. And they would literally arrive and smash world records. They looked and sounded like, very masculine. They had deep voices, very large Adam apple, bad skin, through no fault of their own. I've never had a problem with these individuals. They were pawns of a horrible system. The people I have a big problem with is the IOC. And they allowed this to happen for 20 years. They even had East German doctors sitting on international doping panels. So every time we came up with a way to try and catch them, they would find a way to avoid being caught. And this was allowed to go on for 2 decades. So imagine the number of females that missed out. However, those females only missed out at international competitions, and they predominantly missed out in swimming, track and field, and rowing. What we've got now is 10 times worse, because this is happening across every single sport, at every single level, in every single country. So I've been pushing very hard to say, right, we need to have a female classification, however that looks. Me, ideally, I'd love to bring back sex tests. And then an open and inclusive category so that everyone is still welcome in sport. Because just like you, I'm sure, you want people to do sport. You want people to be physically active, to be healthy, because it helps us, both our body and our minds, and in a world at the moment with mental health, particularly in young girls, through the roof, we need people to be physically active. So it's the last thing in the world I would ever want to do is to ban anyone from sports. I just want to protect the opportunities for people that are biologically female to have equal chance of being able to win medals, put successes onto their onto their CV going forward, get university scholarships, get places on teams, be proud of records that they set, whatever it is. Females are worthy of equal opportunity. We are not second-class citizens, and I'm not prepared to sit back and pretend that we are. So,
amen. Oh my gosh, it's so true. There is no compromise for women. There is nothing that we should have to give up to ensure that trans athletes can compete. But that being said, trans athletes shouldn't be banned from sports. Of course not. And that's something that we see in the States a lot, especially in regards to state legislature being pushed. The opposition, they always say this is an anti-trans bill that bans trans athletes from competing. And that's simply not true. I love how you mentioned it equips people with the right information, with effective messaging, how to communicate about it, what to do. Really powerful. You mentioned in your book, you had a quote, I think it's from Cynthia Millen, and it says, bodies compete against bodies, gender identities don't swim, which is, that's the basis of the argument.
How do we marshal feelings? It's ridiculous. You know, if we turn around and say that we're going to accept a feeling that says someone can feel like a male or a female depending on their feeling, not the reality of their body, where does that stop? You know, what's the next feeling that's going to trump a reality? And we're not doing our kids any favors by not dealing with the truth. You know, it's by telling young children that they're going to be able to change sex when they're not. They're going to have to take medication for the rest of their life. They're going to have to do things to their bodies which will probably shorten their lives.
We're back. Hour number 2, Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. I'm Chad Withrow. Jonathan Hutton is here. We are live in downtown Nashville. Got a great show. Got a great hour ahead for you. You're about to hear our conversation with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. Clay Travis, our fearless leader, will be listening into that conversation. We'll get his reaction to what Greg Sankey has to say coming up momentarily. And then later in the hour, Jim Nagy will join us. But right now, here is SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey.
Hot Mic with Hutt and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. Always enjoy the chats when we have the opportunity here at SEC Media Days here across the OutKick network. Let's just jump right in. Reacting to your opening address for this year, the State of the Union for the Southeastern Conference, I thought it was very on point with your discussion on name, image, likeness, the call for more help with federal legislation. When you and I chatted via Zoom last year, I felt like, well, you're making progress. I didn't get the sense that we are now from that level. Is it frustrating? Did I catch the right tone?
No, I think there is progress as far as interest. You know, the issue is commitment to resolve the issue. I would anticipate, at least indications over the next 3 or 4 weeks, a lot of either discussion, drafts, or actual bills introduced from different sources, senators and House members. And I think the more and more of that activity that takes place, even though they'll be different, is an indication that interest is building, moving towards a commitment to resolve the issue. What we need is something to move through the committee process onto the floor. And
so we're not close.
We've not been successful. We're closer. Now, I don't know what close actually means. I mean,
See, I'm picking up on that
well,
too.
You go
now.
back to like Schoolhouse Rock when I was a kid, and I'm just a bill. Yeah, I'm only a bill, and it's a process, and things don't happen rapidly.
I feel like you make things happen, though.
Well, I do think the time we spent in early June was highly productive. In fact, I walked out of those conversations with an understanding that there was more knowledge, more interest, asking of the right question, more engagement from staff than we've seen. I think that's progress. And whether or not I can predict the timeline is really immaterial. I have a responsibility to try. But I'm also mindful that, you go back to the old Ronald Reagan quote that, I'm from the federal government, I'm here to help. You need to be careful about those words. But the reality I wanted to describe Monday is this is the why we need congressional involvement, and that's to have a national standard. Otherwise, you're left to have an effort at national competition with varying state laws, and that doesn't work very well.
You always speak in a way in your addresses that's very much devoid of ego when talking about the conference that you lead. But when you look at the state of the NCAA right now, which is very much in flux with how things are going with NIL, are you cognizant of the fact that you may be the most powerful person in college sports right now?
I'm asked that question, and I typically respond with great meaning that this is not a power trip for me. I need to be influential and effective. Those are the words that I use. And so the chair, the seat, the job title gives you influence. You need to use that well. And yesterday, in between interviews, I had a couple phone calls on key things where on one, some colleagues moved, I think, to a really healthy place that will slow some thoughts down, but also give us opportunities for the future. Trying to think about potentially being in D.C. again to visit. That's, using influence and trying to be effective. It is a highly interesting time as you think about challenges to authority broadly. And the NCAA is right at the heart of that. And there are missteps that I could identify over time. You have a new leader in Charlie Baker, who is a Republican governor of Massachusetts, a blue state, so he figures out how to solve problems with different points of view. Charlie walked into a situation he didn't create. And I think we need a little bit of patience to see his effort, his ideas, and the NCAA is going to have to continually adapt to be more effective than it is right now. And part of it is we all have been slow to change. And I think there are reasons for that we could go into, but we all have a responsibility to be influential in our own way. I just happen to be in a really prominent role where I say things and all of a sudden they're on the ticker. Like yesterday's moment was I was asked on radio, would we rank 1 through 82 the teams and assign them to bowl games? And I'm like, sure, because I know that we'll have all the teams. Well, I don't even know what that means, just to be honest, but it was a nice answer, right?
SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey with us. You're also helping lead the way for the potential where 25% of all member institutions will be represented in the NCAA tournament, right? I'm against this. I think we're at a point where it's so competitive, even from the 16 seed playing the ones now. How many teams are you advocating for? Is it exactly 25?
No.
What's the perfect tournament for Greg Sankey?
So 25% came from a subcommittee of a bigger committee I chaired, and they were assigned to think about championship bracketing. We go back last July, I had a conversation with Pat Forty for Sports Illustrated, and I learned that whenever you begin an answer with, look, I don't want to make headlines here, you should stop yourself.
Right.
And the headline will follow.
Yeah, yeah.
Right when you say that.
So the full background is I had spent the month of June in a set of meetings where everyone was afraid of things being taken away. Automatic bids, championship access, governance access.
For the SEC's gain or the Big Ten's gain. That was also
whatever
part
the
of
perceptions.
It. Right.
And so, you think about, I'm not trying to take things away, but I don't think, things aren't remaining static. Let me give you 2 examples, the Big Ten and the SEC. Next year, we're going to be at 16. In men's basketball in particular, the Big Ten adds UCLA. If that's not the number 1 most historically successful program, it's in the top 3. USC's done really well in recruiting. That means those 2 programs and other programs are going to experience more losses. Texas and Oklahoma have perennially been in the NCAA tournament. I don't need to hear, well, you don't have a 500 record in the Southeastern Conference of the Big Ten, you shouldn't be in. Those teams may be in the top 40. And so what we do is we provide access to automatic qualifier conferences that provides great storylines like Fairleigh Dickinson and St. Peter's. But this is a national championship of the best teams. And so let's go back a year when Ole Miss won the baseball College World Series. They were the last team in. Now the committee gets together and maybe they're the first team out. The last team in was good enough to win the national championship. And you really look at a bandwidth of probably the top 50. So to answer your question, I think about the top 50 programs across the board, particularly in men's and women's basketball, are really, really competitive programs. And in men's basketball, the competitive variance there is really, really narrow. When you say 1 versus 50, it sounds like a big gap. It's actually not. But we give up the last 15 or so of those spots to provide automatic access to conferences. That's healthy. But I think we can grow a bit. We can think a bit more beyond 68. I don't just go to 25% or 96. I think there are some different models out there that still provide access, so we're not taking anything away, but we make sure we have the best teams in the country with an opportunity to compete for the national championship. And I think that's a little bit more than what we have right now.
But whenever the NCAA completes a 3-year...
By the way, you're fine disagreeing with that.
Oh, I know that. That's why I enjoy talking to you, because I don't want to have Florida Atlantic have to go through again, I'll use Mississippi State in order to go to and face the 1 that they've already had the chance to upset. Or we could go back to a 14 or 15 seed that now might be playing a game that would be a version of Dayton, Ohio.
Another 14 seed.
Yeah, but you go back so this year to Mississippi State's opening round game. It was a buzzer beater. It was an end of game situation. That's great basketball. That's what you want, is compelling stories where people decide on the court rather than specifically in a committee room. And so those were top 40 teams playing that night. I think those are the kind of teams you want to have access. And what you have to remember is there are the stories about 1 being defeated by 16. So we've provided hundreds of those opportunities over time, and it's happened once, maybe twice. 15 versus 2, same sort of thing. So we're asking for that kind of opportunity, which are wonderful storylines, but they're pretty small occurrences. And when you look at the RPI, it is more likely that 11 beats a 1 on a regular basis than a 16 beats a 12, just because of the competitive gap and the statistical analysis. That's part of what informs my thinking.
You don't become a commissioner by not being a good salesman, as we just heard right there with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey on that point.
I was just answering the question.
Yeah.
Innocently, with pure interest.
When you have a 3-year NCAA investigation that ends with one of your member schools, like in the case with Tennessee that ended recently, LSU, a long process that ended recently, do you also feel a sense of completion when those processes are over?
Well, certainly when something's finished, you feel that. But as you start talking about the time frame, I think the time frame is way too long. And this is not new. This is not about the Southeastern Conference. I think the fact we don't have resolution to the Kansas basketball issue is unacceptable. I think the time it took to figure out the post-FBI arrest matters, which was years and years and years. I mean, we had actions, I think, dating back to 2016 that weren't decided until 2022. That just can't be acceptable. What has happened is frequently when we've had these special committees, these committees have said, we need to be more aggressive with penalties. We need to be stronger. We have to take stronger action. But we've missed the time frame. And what I think should happen is we should be more focused on completing these issues in timely manner. One, rewarding leadership on campus. And wouldn't it be awesome if a campus could investigate itself so well and hold itself accountable through change and maybe some penalty, punitive actions, that there's little for the NCAA to do at that point. And so I look at shifting the mindset, and this is not something new. I wrote a memo 3 years ago that's still under consideration to try to move these things along, because I think the lag of time is the biggest gap right now in the NCAA infractions and accountability process.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but your policy typically is to not interfere with universities and programs in their own internal discipline. Couple of difficult things at Alabama this year. Terrible situation with the basketball program. Jermaine Burton in the game against Tennessee also. Do you ever feel a desire to want to get involved in those things? Are you ever someone that would consult a university on what to do in a situation like that? Or do you completely step aside and let the schools handle those matters internally?
So those are two matters, but even over the last year, we could go campus by campus and list issues that one could say was the right level of oversight or accountability provided. You know, I have a responsibility for the role assigned to me, and that role doesn't extend to campus disciplinary issues. Should it? Those are interesting questions that we deal with. I think we've done a fairly effective job at balancing those issues. We just saw a report I think USA Today had on how Title IX is applied. That's a federal law and federal policy assigned to campuses to administer, and it varies greatly. And so there's not uniformity across many aspects of higher education as people try, with I think goodwill and good faith, to address discipline and oversight issues, and they're hard issues.
Greg Sankey has been our guest. As we wrap up, I know you're an avid runner, marathons when you were younger. During COVID, you ran every single day, and there's a streak going, right? Do you still have that going?
No, I have 502 straight days of 35 minutes or more. I just finished a 15K, which is 9 miles. Running in Utica, New York. I had knee surgery, so it slowed me down.
Okay.
So
that ended the streak.
I'm still in the rehab.
Did that cause the end of the streak?
A stomach flu caused the end of the streak.
Oh.
I had worked through one stomach flu and said I'm going to force myself no matter what happens.
That sounds like misery.
I was like at day 280. I'm like, I'm going to go. And then when I hit 502, I was like on the floor. And I'm like, come on, one more day. And I'm like, maybe this is the sign you should just stop.
Very random here. Chad and I are all SEC fans, college football fans. The SEC on CBS, the SEC theme is iconic.
Yeah.
Do you get to preview whatever the new theme is about to be? Do you get versions of it and be like, Yes, that's the Southeastern Conference.
So the amount of feedback over that music is fascinating to me.
It's like the NBA on NBC.
Yeah, and there's other music. So we've had initial conversations, more looking back. We're not going to take the music that's allocated or owned by some other network, so there'll be something different opening.
It's calling John Tesh is what that means.
Yeah, no, I would I'd see if Huey Lewis could come back and do something, or Darius Rucker. I don't know.
There's plenty of Southern music tie-ins.
A compliment to CBS is the way they set the stage for those games.
Oh, yeah.
And the music's part of it, the scenery, and the commentary that's part of the introduction. And we've had conversations with ABC, ESPN about how do we maintain that special feel as we're adding inventory to their world.
I know you said earlier, when you start something with, I don't mean to make headlines here. I'm not trying to insinuate anything.
That means, but we are, right? So
is your relationship with Tony Petitti better than it was with Kevin Warren in the Big Ten?
I don't know better or worse. Tony and I have actually had a lot of interaction since he's started. So it is, at this point, more active, I would say. And I think that's because of the timing and needs. Now, when Kevin first started, and this would be natural for me, the first couple of months was January, February of 2020. And we had plenty of interactions, and then COVID hit, and then we're all talking every week. So just a very different environment. Kevin and I texted over the weekend still, and he was congratulating me on my contract, and we kind of bantered back and forth. My wife and I became grandparents, was talking about, he's got work on a stadium you read about. So I saw Kevin in April at an event as he was transitioning out. So I think I have a friendly relationship with Kevin. He worked for Mike Slive earlier in his career. I worked for Mike. And we may have viewed things differently from time to time, but I think we've always been able to maintain a healthy relationship.
You're always great to do this. We appreciate it, as always. And
it's tough staring at myself on the camera. That's the one time this happens the whole time.
We have to do it every day, and every day it's not fun.
Well, you're just wonderful people to look at.
The sign of power is whenever you joke that you haven't seen yourself on camera
The
before.
better part was the video showing like a woman climbing down a cargo net and falling.
Who knows? Yeah. Who knows on that show? Who knows they were talking about?
Good to see you.
Yep, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for being part of our media days.
The two biggest social media giants, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, are set to battle it out, and I'm here on Broadway asking people who they put their money on. Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, they're gonna fight each other. Who do you think's gonna win?
I think Mark's got him.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Because he's a man.
Okay, and Elon Musk isn't?
Oh, well, of course, he's got money.
Okay.
He's got money. Money, well, money's money.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg in a fight?
I don't know. I'm going to go with Musk.
Why?
It just seems like he's a little bit younger, a little bit smarter.
You just got a good feeling about him?
Yeah, I got a good feeling.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Musk.
Why?
He trains. That guy's going to beat his
But Mark Zuckerberg is actually training jiu-jitsu for 9 months.
Not happening. Not Elon Musk all day. Elon Musk.
Why do you think?
He has no soul. I mean, I think he's definitely just going to no holds barred.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. I feel like he's stronger and smarter.
Oh, Elon Musk.
All the way? Why?
All the way. He's an animal. Think about it.
Mark Zuckerberg's been training for 9 months jiu-jitsu. You think Elon Musk can take him?
Yeah, I think he can take him.
Elon, that oh God, stop playing with Elon. Elon really do this out here, for real.
I hope Elon
Really? Why do you think so?
got better ideas.
Zuckerberg's like 5'7", 155. Musk is 6'1", 190. But Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, who's going to win in a fight?
Oh, Elon Musk. No doubt.
Why do you think so?
He's the GOAT. I've been seeing all the Twitter handles and all the talk, and I'm on Elon Musk's side. I'm ready for them to get in the WWE ring and then come off the top rope. That's what I want to see. I want to see a people's elbow to Mark Zuckerberg.
If one was more likely to be a lizard or a robot, who would it be?
Elon.
Okay.
I think Mark Zuckerberg will win.
Why do you think that?
Because I think he already trains MMA.
So he's got like the prior experience and stuff. I mean, they're both billionaires, so they have the opportunity to get the best training. But I think Mark Zuckerberg will pull away with the win.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think so?
Because he's bigger?
Bigger, okay, but Mark Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Do you think that matters?
No.
Because Elon Musk's he's gonna learn and train, right? So
Yeah. I think he'll handle Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg's a lizard, right? So
he's a lizard, but does that help him?
I don't think so. I think Elon will squash the lizard.
Cage fight. Elon Musk is mental, so Elon Musk.
All it is just he's mental. He's mentally crazy. So
He just wouldn't care, would he?
Okay.
He'd just absolutely go for it. I think Zuckerberg would be a bit more refrained.
Okay.
If that should ever happen, which I doubt, but you never know, it'd be entertaining.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Elon Musk.
Why?
Because my dad is in love with Elon Musk.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to go with Zuckerberg. I mean, Threads just came out, so.
Who do you think would win?
Zuck.
Why do you think so?
Because he's not a real human. He's a robot.
So he'll use that to his advantage.
Yeah, and all the Krav Maga stuff too. Yeah.
Who do you think would win in a fight, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk.
Why do you think Elon Musk?
I think Elon's
He
smarter.
works with robots, so maybe he built a robot to fight for him.
But what if Mark Zuckerberg is a robot?
Oh, wow.
Then I might have to change my answer.
Who do you think's gonna win?
Me.
Show rolls on a Wednesday on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. And you just heard SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. We caught up with him at SEC Media Days. Now we talk with our fearless leader, president of OutKick and founder, Clay Travis, who's on the phone with us right now. Clay, we opened up the interview asking Greg Sankey about his opening remarks in his State of the SEC address about NIL and how he didn't sound overly optimistic and is calling once again on some form of federal legislation to set the rule book for NIL. My question is it a mistake to call on federal legislation for anything right now, especially something like NIL? Is it a mistake to rely on that?
I don't know that it's a mistake, because I do think from a pure competitive standpoint, you probably need a uniform set of NIL law so that the rules in California and Florida and Illinois are not completely different. Because you could get into a situation where under federalism, there's actually an arms race for high-end, football players. And so I'll give you an example. I'm not sure. I have not studied this in great detail, but I know that under California NIL law, high school kids can get paid. So we talk a lot about how NIL is going to impact college, but there are high school kids who are juniors and seniors that can enter into contracts to be paid for their name, image, and likeness while they're still enrolled in high school. That same law may not apply in Texas or Tennessee or New York. It just depends on what the individual state laws are, but you've got a hodgepodge that is actually pretty complicated, and you can see how you could worry if you are, say, the commissioner of a highly competitive college football conference, that you could end up in an arms race where Texas is making one law and Florida is making another, and you're trying to reconcile the disparate treatments as it pertains to NCAA law. And tying this in, the current Attorney General of the state of Tennessee, Jonathan Scarmetti, sent a letter to the NCAA and said, if you try to implement a bowl ban, we will ban that. We will sue you under state law, which takes precedence over NCAA rules. And Tennessee has passed an NIL law that basically says that you have a right as an athlete to participate in a bowl game for purposes of being able to monetize your talent. And so if that right is taken away, it's an attack. And I'm try to simplify it here, but it's an attack upon your individual ability to earn income. And so the state would sue over any attempt to do that. I don't think that's going to become unique in terms of individual states, because one is good politics, right? I mean, if you're a representative in Alabama and you want to draft NIL law that makes it more likely that Alabama and Auburn are going to win sporting events and have better players, I would think there's probably no law that is more likely to be widely supported across partisan, boundaries, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or independent, than, hey, we want Auburn and Alabama to win more football games. Let's do whatever is necessary to help make that a reality.
Clay Travis with us on Hot Mic with Hutt and Withrow. Clay, one of the topics we got into as well is, and you said this early on, and while I was attending SEC Media Days years ago, the attention to detail and the preparation that Mike Slive would put into the opening address. I know Greg Sankey does the same, because when he speaks, people listen. And I said, I was listening, and I didn't take a very optimistic approach to what his tone and tenor of how things have gone over the last 12 months or so on Capitol Hill for where he hopes it will go. And here was Greg Sankey's answer.
The issue is commitment to resolve the issue. I would anticipate, at least indications over the next 3 or 4 weeks, a lot of either discussion, drafts, or actual bills introduced from different sources, senators and House members. And I think the more and more of that activity that takes place, even though they'll be different, is an indication that interest is building, moving towards a commitment to resolve the issue. What we need is something to move through the committee process onto the floor. And
so we're not close.
We've not been successful. We're closer. Now, I don't know what close actually means. I mean,
See,
you
I'm
go
picking
back
up on that
well,
too
you go
now.
back to like Schoolhouse Rock when I was a kid, and I'm just a bill. Yeah, I'm only a bill, and it's a process, and things don't happen rapidly.
I feel like you make things happen, though.
Well, I do think the time we spent in early June was highly productive. In fact, I walked out of those conversations with an understanding that there was more knowledge, more interest, asking of the right question, more engagement from staff than we've seen. I think that's progress. And whether or not I can predict the timeline is really immaterial. I have a responsibility to try. But I'm also mindful that, you go back to the old Ronald Reagan quote that, I'm from the federal government, I'm here to help. You need to be careful about those words. But the reality I wanted to describe Monday is this is the why we need congressional involvement, and that's to have a national standard. Otherwise, you're left to have an effort at national competition with varying state laws, and that doesn't work very well.
And Clay, just picking up on what he said there, no matter how much or how little we think Greg Sankey is doing behind the scenes, and we know he's doing a lot, he's doing more than a lot. He has, the web spread very wide on Capitol Hill, but also the tenor and tone of what the presidents of his universities want.
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard to get anything passed on Capitol Hill right now.
Yeah.
Leave aside NIL. I mean, you're talking about a basically even Senate and a basically even House. And so the idea of getting anything pushed through on a bipartisan basis is going to be a challenge. I think what it speaks to is when you go to Capitol Hill like they did with Nick Saban, you can pretty much get any meeting you want. And so I think what the SEC has and what the Big Ten would have certainly is the star power to be able to get in front of the right people politically. But I tend to think that it's going to be super hard to get anything passed between now and 2024 when we have another presidential election. I think by and large, much of the gears of governance are going to increasingly not move very smoothly.
Clay, you're hosting a party tonight here at 6th and Peabody, downtown Nashville, for SEC Media Days. A lot of people we know are going to be in attendance. The band Parmalee is going to headline. The SEC is very important to you. A little bit of show and tell. I know you can't see this right now, but I'll show the audience. Today I was approached by Mike Slive, the now deceased Mike Slive, former commissioner of the SEC. his former assistant, who brought me this book on Rocky Top, written by Clay Travis, and said when they were cleaning out Commissioner Slive's office after he passed away, that this book was in his bookcase. And on the inside of it, I'll read it right now. It says, "To Commissioner Mike Slive, thanks so much for all your hard work to make the SEC the greatest conference in America. I hope you enjoy my book half as much as I did our interview. From one lapsed lawyer to another, signed Clay." So I have been given this to give to you tonight at this party. But Clay, I say all this to say, I know the SEC is very important to you. Commissioner Slive was as well. The SEC's been really blessed with great leadership from Mike Slive to Greg Sankey. It really has been impressive.
Yeah, this is maybe the first time I've had an autographed copy of my own book returned to me. So that is, on the one hand, he kept it on the bookshelf. So I take that as at least a positive sign. Yeah, look, I mean, what I would say about Mike Slive, and I'm paraphrasing from when we've talked before and I've interviewed him, he talked all the time, and I think it was very significant to him about viewing the Southeastern Conference as a legacy and as a public trust. And the idea that he had was, I want to be the steward, and I know Greg Sankey would sign off on this same idea. I want to do a good enough job as the commissioner of the SEC that when I move on and someone else rises to take over as commissioner, that the public trust, the brand, the SEC itself, the shield, is in a better position than it was before I took over. And that to me is how important those guys view that job. And I think it speaks well to the conference in general that in the last, what are we sitting at now, like 30 years, there basically have been 3 SEC commissioners, if I'm not mistaken, Roy Kramer, Mike Slive, and now Greg Sankey. And Sankey has signed on through 2028. But a lot of times that stability allows the growth of an organization in a substantial way. And I can say, look, Roy Kramer was the idea that he had was to expand and create a college SEC championship game. And so he added South Carolina and Arkansas and the SEC championship game. Mike Slive added Missouri and Texas A&M. And Greg Sankey is now going to add Texas and Oklahoma next year. And I think all of them would argue that the growth of the SEC from a 10-team organization to a 16-team organization has made the overall strength of the SEC brand much greater than it was 30-some-odd years ago when those guys first came into the office as the commissioners of the SEC.
Clay, I believe it's the 15-year anniversary this week of you asking Tim Tebow if he's saving himself for marriage. Now we're not even lucky enough to get most of the conference quarterbacks to show up to SEC Media Days. So as great as the SEC has been trending, we don't get those moments from you or any quarterback that could go down that path the way Tebow did.
Where does that question rank in your list of career achievements, Clay?
Yeah, the reason they put that the SEC Media Days in this week is because it's one of the slowest sports weeks of the year. And, you know, they can turn it into a big event, 1,000 people in Nashville. Hopefully a lot of those people will come to our event this evening.
They'll be here.
But there'll be a good crowd, but they're trying to create news. You guys tell me. I haven't even seen any significant news really that's come out of SEC Media Days. And I think that's one of the Tebow question, there's not even been a question asked that anybody's really reacted to or has created news. Candidly, I think they need more newsworthy events because for the most part, nothing has really been said. I think a lot of these coaches and players are so well trained when it comes to media now that their goal is not to say anything of any particular substance. You know, there's not a lot of Steve Spurriers, Mike Leaches that are in the SEC now. They're very much sort of corporate buttoned up guys by and large. And, you got a Nick Saban who feels, I think, pretty comfortable saying whatever he wants. But that's the exception. Most guys are just trying to avoid making news, which in many ways defeats the purpose of having a big media event when everybody's goal is to not make news. And then I think it's a car wash impact, right? Like these guys have to go through and they talk to ESPN, they talk to CBS, and by the time they talk to the big rooms full of media, I think a lot of them are drained and also they've answered every question under the sun. And so you don't have very many unique or interesting questions being asked.
Clay, we look forward to it tonight, man. It's going to be jammed. Bailey Zimmerman's dropping off his trucks right now for the tailgate throwdown as we speak. So it's going to be, and Parmalee's going through sound check currently. So and the weather is going to be perfect after what was a crazy evening last night. So
yeah,
can't
it looks
wait.
like it's going to be perfect. I hope people come out and have a good time, and I'll see everybody there tonight.
That sounds good.
All
man.
right, Clay. Sounds good.
Clay Travis.
See y'all.
Later.
Yep.
President, founder of OutKick, Clay Travis. A story out there also wanted to pass along, which I think is sort of ridiculous, that if there's going to be a horns down motion made by any player in a game against Texas, it's going to be an automatic 15-yard penalty once they get to the SEC. I think things like that are just so dumb.
It was a motion, but they haven't come to a conclusion on how that's going to be handled,
The other one
right?
is the gator chomp. You know, we've seen people mock Florida with a gator chomp and doing something around that.
Well, they've got – see, it's semantics now about the category of unsportsmanlike conduct, right?
Is it taunting an opponent?
Well,
is it making a travesty of the game? Is it otherwise compromising our ability to manage the game? There's a difference between a player giving a signal directly in the face of an opponent as opposed to doing it with teammates celebrating. I'm all for that, and I do think there are various levels of it. If you go up and get in someone's face and there's a hand gesture in their face that could prompt a physical altercation – I can understand how that would be a 15-yard penalty, but if you're doing a group celebration where you look at the ESPN cameras and do the horns down on your way off the field, don't care.
Well,
I don't care about that.
It is a – it's just funny. Vince Young got into a fight over this. Remember this?
Yes.
Someone gave him the upside-down hook'em horns, and he got into a brawl with someone
I think
over
he
it.
also had about 2 bottles of tequila in him.
So
by
did the
time he
person
did
doing
that.
it to him, though.
Yeah. Well, I remember the pictures from whatever he was at. And,
It's then Oklahoma, you know Oklahoma's going to always do it.
Well, it's crazy to me, though, that it's that. But, again, I do like separating the two. There's a difference between getting in someone's face and taunting them and celebrating with a horns down towards cameras or or your sideline or whatever. Just let's use common sense with it. That would be my only thing.
Just score and then go double birds in the end zone.
Let's use a little bit of common sense. Jim Nagy's the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. Always love catching up with Jim, talking about the best prospects, talking about the NFL draft. He can discuss all of it. We sat down with him at SEC Media Days. We'll talk with Jim Nagy coming up. This is Hot Mic with Hutt and Withrow on the OutKick Network.
Pat Fitzgerald has been fired. Pat Fitzgerald, the beleaguered, the weirdo, I guess, or his weird players, has been fired by Northwestern University. And the Northwestern children, the players, are not happy about it. They are not taking it well. Well, I ask you, Northwestern players. In fact, I just put out a video to Northwestern players that are mad. And they're mad because, well, the old coach. The old coach got blank canned because, well, the players decided it was a good idea to get naked, do naked crawls, naked claps, naked soap up themselves in front of the shower and make players run through because the players of Northwestern really are perverted. I mean, I'll never understand it. Now, I got guys saying, well, you know, Bobby Knight, you guys hazed just in a different way, yelling and screaming. Yeah, you're right. We did. Tough. You don't like it? So what? But we never did the nudity thing. We never did the sexual assault thing. We never did the stuff, hey, we're going to slap you and dry hump you. At some point, the players, don't you agree, the players of Northwestern got to look themselves in the mirror and say, you know what? This is kind of on us. You know what? We caused a lot of this. You know what? We shouldn't have done that. Now, every time I see a Northwestern player from now on, I'm like, yeah, you're a weirdo. Used to be every time I saw a Northwestern player, I'd be like, man, you're a tough dude. You played for a tough coach, played for a high-end academic institution. I'd hire you in a second. Now I'm like, yeah, you got a bunch of weirdos running around there. Now I'm like, what in the hell are you doing there in the locker room at Northwestern? And I told you yesterday that this firing was coming because of this one reason. when you have to have outside people monitor your locker room because your players are perverts, because your coach allows it, because it's a culture of somehow, some way naked hazing. And no one's denying the hazing, by the way. So it's not like I'm speaking out of school. Sure, Fitzgerald, whatever, is a great dude. Sure, he is the face of Northwestern. I would argue he's the most important figure in the history of Northwestern athletics. Nobody's not saying good dude. But he did what a lot of dumb meat-headed coaches do. He got on his little mount. He's got his little pillar. He's got his little kingdom. And on top of the kingdom is him. And he got to thinking he was untouchable because no coach with any common sense would allow that in this day and age. I don't know what they were doing back when Bear Bryant was having guys out at camp. I don't know what they were doing when Kay first started. I don't know what they were doing at Indiana when Knight first started. I only know what I've been involved in, and it's never involved dry humping other men or nudity. Just saying. In the locker room. Naked. On my team. Never. Anywhere, actually, but never. I used to give you a ball tap once in a while out in public just to say hello. But I got to tell you, it's just the weirdest thing. And none of these players are taking any accountability. You know what they're doing? They're doing the Biden strategy. This went from the Bob Knight strategy of round up all the players, ex-players, whoever, and talk great things about this strong man. Look at his chin. Yeah, that's what they do.
We're back. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Alongside Jonathan Hutton, I'm Chad Withrow. Some great coverage coming to you from SEC Media Days this week. Hutton, earlier I complained about someone who is a conversation lingerer. They linger too long in a conversation, don't know when to get out and move on to the next conversation or move on about their business.
Right.
Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl is not one of those guys. He is great at sitting in the conversation, and when you're in the conversation with him, you're enjoying it every time.
And what he's done, Chad, is he has turned that event into a draft weekend, a full week, where I think it's more beneficial and it impacts draft rooms just as much and soon to be more than the NFL Combine. Because half the time the top players are not going to Indy and doing everything. They go for the medicals. But you can already talk to the players at the Senior Bowl, and if you're the senior quarterback or any position from a lower tier conference or program, you get to go head-to-head with the pads on and prove your worth in the NFL draft process. Plus, you have the other guys across the top conferences who are actually participating in this more often than not now.
Yeah, and I think you're right. He really has turned the Senior Bowl into the best resource for GMs and scouts in the NFL to evaluate talent. So we'll talk to the talent evaluator himself. Here is Jim Nagy, Executive Director of Reese's Senior Bowl.
Back at SEC Media Days, our broadcast set up here in downtown Nashville with the Executive Director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy. Joins us on Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Good to see you here in person.
Good morning, guys. Good to see you.
You've built this the Senior Bowl into what is right there on par. I believe it's better than the NFL Combine based on evaluation and how you can see players really play ball, right, instead of shorts and a T-shirt.
It's real football.
What's the message? Or why are you here at Media Days for the upcoming season? Is it more about the coaches? Is it more about the players who are here? Who do you want to talk to and why?
Mostly the players. Mostly the players. It's good to connect with the coaches as well. Again, when the head guys, like I don't talk to those guys during the season very often unless they reach out to me. I'll see a lot of assistant coaches and have conversations at games on Saturdays. But the head guys are busy. But no, it's more about the players, connecting with these guys, kind of a first touch point for them. Outside the quarterbacks, like off air we talked about. I was at Manning camp, so I know some of the quarterbacks from that. But no, this is just the first time. We've got a little thing that I give the players about the game, and it's about it. And I don't take up much of their time. I just, brief introduction. That's about it.
You have to love football players to do this job, I feel like. And every time we talk to you, there is a genuine love of football players and wanting to help them that comes across. Am I accurate in saying that?
Yeah, man, you got to love. No, when I was working in the NFL, you'd be on planes and watching tape, and people would say, "Oh, what do you do?" And you'd tell them, and they're like, "Oh, do you love that?" And I'm like, "You got to love it, because especially the NFL scouting part, that's a hard life. I don't think people realize. They think NFL, it's real glamorous. Well, it's really not. Like, you're on the road 200 nights a year, and you're staying in Fairfields, and you got to love it. No, in this role is great, because I feel like I can help the players a little more, and just be a sounding board for them, and kind of mentor for them in some ways, and help them guide them through the draft process. Because again, like I'm getting ready to go out to some colleges and talk to teams about the draft process, and this is a huge 10 months for these guys. It's really stressful. There's a lot thrown at them. Their families don't really know how to navigate it. So I do, man. I feel really blessed in this role to be able to give back a little bit. I've been doing this a long time now, so to give back and help these players, it's a good opportunity.
Worst scouting trip, travel experience throughout your years in the NFL?
Man, there's been some tough travel stuff. I'll say the worst time, I was a 25-year-old Aries scout, first year in the league. I didn't have two nickels to rub together. I'm in Seattle, working for the Redskins at the time, and they didn't give us a company card. Like, I'm 25 years old. I don't have a lot of money in my bank account. I can be bankrolling hotel nights, but it literally is coming out of pocket to do the hotel. So I'm in Seattle for the first time. Go to the Space Needle. I want to go up in the Space Needle, right? I didn't even have enough money to go up in the Space Needle, which was pretty brutal.
Did you get there and they had to turn you away when you found out the price? Or
Yeah, no. I got there and I saw what it was. I'm like, well, I don't have enough money in my account to do this. Like, this is pitiful. But no, I mean, there's stories obviously about being in schools. I got kicked out of Pittsburgh once. So they were playing Notre Dame that week, and Charlie Weiss I was working for the Patriots, and Charlie Weiss had just left the Pats to go to Notre Dame, and they were playing Notre Dame that week. So when they found out, I came in and I'd called ahead. Like, I'd gone through all the protocols, but when I'm watching tape, it's like 11 o'clock. I'd been there all morning, and the DFO, Director of Football Operations, comes down. He's like, "Jim, we're going to have to ask you to leave." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, we're playing Charlie Weiss this week." I'm like, "Well, you could have told me that before I drove all the way to Pittsburgh for this visit." But no, there's some good stories.
Most people would be thrilled to get kicked out of Pittsburgh. So good for you. Quarterbacks, right? There's only 5 here at SEC Media Days, which is a departure from most years.
Yeah.
That's sort of shows the state of that position this year in the league, where there's a lot of transition happening. Specifically, Joe Milton. You made the exception for Hendon Hooker that we talked about with the injury this last year.
Mm-hmm.
Another quarterback coming through Josh Heupel's system. How much interest do you have in him and what he could possibly do this year?
Yeah, plenty. And I understand why teams didn't send their quarterbacks, because it's a big prove-it year across the country at the quarterback position. There's a ton of names. I mean, compared to most years, you really at this time, usually most years we're going into the year, there's about 10 guys that legitimately, 10 to 15 guys that have a legit chance if they play well to get an invite that we like. This year there's like 20 to 25, and that's because so many guys came back and NIL money brought them back for whatever reason. But yeah, Joe Milton's obviously a guy that's interesting at the Manning camp. We were talking earlier, he threw the ball 83 yards in the air. So, I mean, the guy's got a hose for an arm. He's a good athlete. He's a big, strapped-up dude. Wait till you see him. I mean, maybe you've been around him, but, I mean, he's a big, physically imposing-looking guy.
And he threw 83 yards, then did a backflip.
And then he did the backflip. So, that was right out of – I think he took that right out of Anthony Richardson's playbook from last year. Like, Anthony Richardson was big and strong and had a huge arm, and then he did a backflip. So maybe if I do the same thing, I might be a top 10 pick. So, but no, he looked really good down the stretch. Had the big bowl game against Clemson, but it's a big prove-it year. Now it's his team. We talked about that at the Manning camp. He and I talked about it. I'm like, this is your team now, man. Like, you got to show it. You got to be the leader. You got to lead these guys. And so yeah, big year for him.
Jim Nagy with us from the Reese's Senior Bowl. So I'm thinking back to our previous conversations. As you're watching the draft play out and you see your guys, or in the case I'm going to get to, the guy who didn't come was Stetson Bennett. Are you pairing guys with coaches and thinking, oh, that's going to be a hit?
For sure. For sure.
When Sean McVay blesses a quarterback, are you thinking that?
Yeah, no, I mean, fits everything. I tell the players that all the time. Like, the level, the discrepancy in talent at the NFL level is so slim.
Yeah.
So what keeps guys in the league is the makeup stuff. Like, you miss more on, when you work for, I look back on the teams I work for and the players we quote unquote missed on. We didn't really miss on the player and like that evaluation. We missed on the person. Like he wasn't the competitor we thought he was. He wasn't as tough as we thought he was. So yeah, and so fit matters and organization matters. So yeah, sometimes when you see a guy drafted, like Hendon Hooker's a great example. We just saw him down in the lobby a couple days ago. Detroit's a great fit for Hendon. He's going there. He's not going to be rushed on the field. Jared Goff's a great vet. He's been there. He's done that. He can learn under Jared Goff. And then you see other guys get drafted and you're like, oof, that's going to be, that's a hard room to break through. So yeah, that's when we watch the draft. Yeah, obviously every time everyone gets picked, I'm like, try to figure out the situation.
Is Dan Campbell a hard fit for guys, though? Is that one that's more specific because of his personality when you see someone go to Detroit?
I think that, they know what fits. They know what guys are going to fit them. And that's why when we have orientation at Senior Bowl week, the first night, Sunday night, we get all the players together. And that's the only thing I tell them. Like, guys, the only advice I'll give you as you go through the week is be true to yourself. Like, don't put on a front. Like, these agents try to coach all the players up to act a certain way and answer questions a certain way. And yes, there's a better way to answer some questions in other ways. But please be true to yourself, because there's 32 different cultures in the league. Every building's different. I mean, I spent a lot of time in New England and a lot of time in Seattle, and those two cultures and those two buildings are completely polar opposite. So I'm like, the worst thing you can do as a player is act a certain way through the process, and then a team drafts you thinking you're that guy, and then you show up there and you're like, oh my God, I don't really fit here. So I think anyone Detroit drafts is probably someone they got to feel through the process is like, he's our kind of guy.
Have you ever given that advice to a group of players and then players start saying things that maybe they shouldn't, and you say, hey, maybe don't be exactly who you are. Don't say that. I wouldn't go around saying this.
I'll
say. You ever have to rein guys back in after that?
No, I think you just got to be transparent. I mean, there was a player, I won't say his name here, but there was a player that we drafted in Seattle that I scouted, and he had some off the field issues coming out, and you could Google it and find a lot of it. And we interviewed him at the Senior Bowl, and he came out with way more stuff off the field than I even knew about, right? The people at Alabama were pretty forthcoming. Like, I felt like I had a lot. And then he starts talking about the football part, and you saw how fired up he got and how intense he got. And that's what we wanted in Seattle. We wanted alpha males. Like, we were building a locker room full of alphas back then, with Cam Chancellor and all these guys. So he was a great fit for us. Like, he put the off-the-field stuff behind him. And I love the transparency. I just love the transparency. I think guys, the NFL teams, they do so much research. They're going to figure out the answer. So you can't BS them.
I want to know where we're headed with this position, running back. It's been in the headlines, right? The franchise tag, guys wanting the extension, they're not going to get it. The rules are set up, the pay is set up to where just go back to the draft and get another guy and put more wear and tear on the tires. In high school, over the last era, define that however you want, you'll know this. Best athlete walking the hallways is either the quarterback or the running back. Guys didn't want to play defense. They didn't want to play corner. Now the money's at corner, the money's at wide receiver, certainly quarterback. Are we going to see less players desire to play the running back position? And is it almost, instead of a wide receiver that can't catch, so now he's a corner, will we see more of a conversion to, okay, we've got a starter at corner or wide receiver, dude's going to play running back for us?
Yeah, I think.
Is it that drastic?
I think it's getting us so much attention right now, and I'll say a couple things. One, I hate it for the running backs. I hate it for those guys because no position on that field takes more of a physical toll than those guys. And then they're being devalued. They're being devalued on draft day. I mean, think over the last couple of years. Yeah, Bijan Robinson went in the first round this year. Najee went a couple years ago.
Jahmyr Gibbs went this year also. Pretty good year for running back, though, right?
It was.
This is the exception and not the rule.
To have two
in the first round.
I mean, but so they're not getting valued on draft day, and then they get nobody wants to pay them on a second contract. So, I mean, I always use this example. We had Dameon Pierce from Florida in the Senior Bowl 2 years ago. The Houston Texans take him in the fourth round last year. And all he did was he was just under 1,000 yards, and he missed 4 games. So if you can go out in the fourth round and spend fourth round draft capital and pay a guy, really pennies on the dollar that you would have to pay a Tony Pollard or a Saquon Barkley at the top of the pay scale, why wouldn't you do it? It doesn't make business sense for the teams. But I hate it for the players. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're going to do, adjust the salary cap or the rookie the rookie pool. I don't know what they're going to do. And when it comes to playing positions, if I have a son right now, and because to me, if you're either a running back or a linebacker, right? Like you're either wide out or a corner. So if I've got a son and he's a really good running back, and he's not, and he's, some guys don't like, some guys are better with being hit than going to hit someone. Like if my son had even a little bit of a defensive mentality, I'm moving him to the other side of the ball. And the same thing with wide receivers. I mean, our board at the end of the year, like we have so many dang wideouts. I mean, every school's got 2 or 3 or 4 guys now that catch 50 balls in college football. You know, so it's really a dime a dozen position. So if my kid's got some movement skill and he's tough enough to tackle people, like I want him playing corner, right? So it's just, again, it'll be interesting to see. We'll see, but it's going to be interesting.
And then you go to the NFL where you go from 100 plays to 60. You know, like it's a drastic difference and so specialized. And then you can see them all on display in the draft process at the Reese's Senior Bowl. Not Reese's, Reese's.
Yeah.
We always get it right.
It's because it's not Reese's
Does that bother you
Pieces.
like it does me when people say Reese's? It may be just kind of a Southern thing, but I'm thinking the name of the person was James Reese. It is Reese's, apostrophe S, not Reese's.
When I took the job, they laid it out this way, and it's Reese's Pieces, not Reese's Pieces.
Exactly.
They're not Pieces. It's Reese's Pieces. So it doesn't bother me. I'm just glad that our title sponsor comes to Mobile twice a year and they drop a 400-pound pallet of candy in our office. Because it saves me from having to go out on Halloween and buy Halloween candy. I mean, everyone in our office, so we've got like 6 full-time employees in Mobile. Like everyone just goes home the day before Halloween and like boxes full of stuff. So
I'm jealous.
We are all the most popular house in our respective neighborhoods on Halloween because you're getting the full cups and you're getting full-size Hershey bars,
shovels.
Yeah.
It is objectively the best candy. I will vouch for that till the day I die. Objective. This is not a subjective take. Objectively,
Wow.
Reese's Cups are the best candy.
You got to have the sticks. You got to try the Reese's sticks.
I've tried them.
Those are good.
I've tried them. I like
He's got
those
some
too.
with him in his bag.
Sticks are my favorite.
Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Issue of male advantage plaguing women's sports, it only recently came to light, I feel like, for so many, including myself. I was really only became aware of this when I was slapped across the face with it in regards to Leah Thomas. But as you alluded to, this is something that you had experience of. You were well ahead of your time. I mean, 43 years ago, you saw this. And so would you be able to touch on what that experience looked like competing against the East Germans?
And we would have East German athletes turning up to things like, even like the Olympics, and we'd never, ever seen them before. And they would literally arrive and smash world records. They looked and sounded like, you know, very masculine. They had deep voices, very large Adam apple, bad skin, through no fault of their own. You know, I've never had a problem with these individuals. They were pawns of a horrible system. The people I have a big problem with is the IOC. And they allowed this to happen for 20 years. You know, they even had East German doctors sitting on international doping panels. So every time we came up with a way to try and catch them, they would find a way to you know, avoid being caught. And this was allowed to go on for 2 decades. So imagine the number of females that missed out. However, those females only missed out at international competitions, and they predominantly missed out in swimming, track and field, and rowing. What we've got now is 10 times worse, because this is happening across every single sport, at every single level, in every single country. You know, so I've been pushing very hard to say, right, we need to have a female classification, however that looks. Me, ideally, I'd love to bring back sex tests. And then an open and inclusive category so that everyone is still welcome in sport. Because just like you, I'm sure, you want people to do sport. You know, you want people to be physically active, to be healthy, because it helps us, both our body and our minds, you know, and in a world at the moment with mental health, particularly in young girls, through the roof, we need people to be physically active. So it's the last thing in the world I would ever want to do is to ban anyone from sports. I just want to protect the opportunities for people that are biologically female to have equal chance of being able to win medals, put successes onto their onto their CV going forward, get university scholarships, get places on teams, you know, be proud of records that they set, whatever it is. Females are worthy of equal opportunity. We are not second-class citizens, and I'm not prepared to sit back and pretend that we are. So,
amen. Oh my gosh, it's so true. There is no compromise for women. There is nothing that we should have to give up to ensure that trans athletes can compete. But that being said, trans athletes shouldn't be banned from sports. Of course not. And that's something that we see in the States a lot, especially in regards to state legislature being pushed. The opposition, they always say this is an anti-trans bill that bans trans athletes from competing. And that's simply not true. I love how you mentioned it equips people with the right information, with effective messaging, how to communicate about it, what to do. Really powerful. You mentioned in your book, you had a quote, I think it's from Cynthia Millen, and it says, bodies compete against bodies, gender identities don't swim, which is, that's the basis of the argument.
How do we marshal feelings? It's ridiculous. You know, if we turn around and say that we're going to accept a feeling that says someone can feel like a male or a female depending on their feeling, not the reality of their body, where does that stop? You know, what's the next feeling that's going to trump a reality? And we're not doing our kids any favors by not dealing with the truth. You know, it's by telling young children that they're going to be able to change sex when they're not. They're going to have to take medication for the rest of their life. They're going to have to do things to their bodies which will probably shorten their lives.
Show is absolutely flying by today. Here
Look
we
at
are
the time.
already in the
Look at
third
the time.
hour, 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Mountain, 2 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock in Hawaii. Whatever time of day it is for you right now, this show is getting you through your afternoon in a very fast manner. And for that, we're all thankful. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate you listening on one of our fine radio stations across the OutKick network. This is Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. And some would describe this time of year, Hutton, as a slow sports time of year. Waiting on American football to start back. We're in the dregs of the middle of baseball season. We're just past the All-Star break, but we're not quite to pennant chase time yet. We're still awaiting all of that. And here comes our Savior. Our Savior. We have a championship to discuss. Finally, our long wait is over, Hutton. We have an NBA Summer League championship and a champion.
Well, not just the championship, because for the second consecutive year, they have handed out championship rings. They were handing out a ball cap and a T-shirt prior to last season for the NBA Summer League. And now they're handing out, through the NBA, not the team, through the NBA, they are handing out something that we will find on Pawn Stars out in Las Vegas, where this Summer League is taking place. The Cleveland Cavaliers went 6-0, Chad. Unbeaten. What a title. And
what a long time. I mean, that
the
is
league.
You want to talk about load management, Hutton, that 6-game season? I hear guys set out 2 of those 6 games just for load management purposes.
Yeah, that
takes a real toll
case.
on you playing 6 basketball games.
Not just maybe Chris Paul has found the title that he could go do is the NBA Summer League. That way his daughter's not bullied at school by the kid who knows. This is great ammo, by the way, for the kid who looked up Paul's career and knows all the details about the non-titles.
Yes.
Just use their NBA Summer Leagues that go 6-0 that have championship rings. Yeah, so the NBA's created it's a generic ring, but it can't be inexpensive. Let's just put it that way. I don't think it's anywhere close to, the $40,000 to $100,000 on average NBA title ring that we have certainly seen across the league. But they're getting rings now instead of T-shirts. And the reason why, according to what the NBA is saying, is they want to provide some incentive for players to take wins and losses in the Summer League more seriously. Players who don't have their future officially set can continue to prove their skills while also competing for a more tangible prize at the conclusion of the event. I would to that I would say, players who don't have their future officially set should be enough motivation to want to play and take things seriously and try to win these Summer League games. Also, according to Jake Fisher from SI, Summer League players receive a total of $1,500 in per diem over 12 days of competition. It's actually an 11-day deal. 11 days, 6 games, and it results in a championship ring, which I'm not even sure the players look at and think much of. based on how generic it ends up looking with the SL instead of the team crest on there. So are the Cavs throwing a parade for this? No. But the league is trying to incentivize players for showing up, especially those at the top of the draft.
Hutt, now I'll crush the NBA when I feel it's warranted. I'll defend the NBA when I feel it's warranted. I say this in all seriousness. This may be one of the worst stories ever for the NBA. This whole thing reads like parody. It doesn't even seem real. That you need to incentivize guys in a make-believe summer league developmental program to play to try to win by giving them an expensive ring. I understand it's not as expensive as an NBA championship ring. But if you're incentivizing these guys and you're claiming that's what you're doing, this is not the fake championship ring they give out at the end of my daughter's 8U softball tournaments after a Saturday and Sunday tournament that are plastic. That's just a symbol for the girls to pose with a ring. These are a little bit more high-end than that, I'm guessing, which, by the way, that's also ridiculous. This is even more ridiculous because these are adult men playing in a developmental league, and their league is so incredibly soft that they've decided we have so many betas in this league that we need to incentivize you to play hard for 6 games.
Yeah, it's 6 games.
Over an 11-day period. Not 6 games in one day. I used to do that in basketball camp in high school when I went to Tennessee Tech camp. We'd play 5 or 6 games in a day.
What'd you get?
6 games. I didn't get a damn ring. I got a T-shirt. Maybe.
Which is what they were receiving.
6 games in 11 days, and we're going to tout an NBA Summer League champion. This is one of the most revealing and worst stories for the NBA I have ever witnessed.
Well,
just awful.
And the culture that we're currently watching, which is entitled to this for showing up and playing. And again, the incentive is for guys who haven't locked in their spot to continue to play hard. I mean, if you haven't locked in your spot and you're not playing hard, get out of here.
I mean,
pack your bags and head back to Fargo.
Guys play in men's league, church league games, and
you're
they
in
play
Vegas
to win the game. The game gets late and you try to win it.
Yeah.
You're incentivized by nothing. You're incentivized by trying not to tear both Achilles tendons during the game. That's the incentivized stance that you take during the game. I mean, this is just utterly ridiculous. Also utterly ridiculous in the NBA story department. Amani Bates, who was at Memphis and then transferred to Eastern Michigan.
And he's a rookie with the Cavs. He just got a ring.
Scored a ton of points at Eastern Michigan on a terrible team. Did not help them win at all, but scored a bunch of points. Getting ready for the NBA. Hutton mentioned it. NBA Summer League champion. I should start with that on the bio. NBA Summer League 2023 champion, Amani Bates, credits a number of guys for getting him ready for his transition to the league. But the first 2 that he cites, Ja Morant and Miles Bridges. Now, we know about Ja Morant's situations, issues. We've talked about them at length. Miles Bridges also a very public domestic violence, awful issue that has happened. Not a great start for Amani Bates that he's pointing to. This is kind of like the equivalent of pointing to Pac-Man Jones, who actually does help people get ready for the league.
Here's where there's hypocrisy because Pac-Man Jones is being praised for offering consult for Ja Morant right now. So pick your headline on this. And I would also say if he's looking for someone to think, Ja Morant, I'm sure, has done quite a bit for young players, including those that he's played with throughout his career and someone that would be in the same city as him. Maybe this guy witnessed what went down at the altercation at his house. But here's hoping that it's more of do what I say, not as I do, which, I mean, look, I'm skeptical on that too. But he also cites very other great examples. Kevin Durant among them.
Kevin Durant's a good one. Now,
he's also name dropping.
Yeah, like it's usually you get the guy who had all the issues that's well removed from them.
Yeah.
Right? If they've moved past that part of their life, not necessarily when they're in the middle of it, like Morant and Miles Bridges. But either way, we just want to close this NBA segment by once again congratulating Amani Bates and his Cleveland Cavaliers Summer League teammates on that 2023 title. Thank you so
Congratulations.
much for getting us through this slow sports time of the year.
Could not have done that without John Morant.
Just amazing performance in those 6 games.
I believe
over
John
11
Morant,
days.
with John Morant's rookie year, were they also Summer League champs? They received a T-shirt that year.
Did the high school kid that John Morant punched and threatened with a weapon, was he on the Summer League team also? Has he advanced now to the point? I don't know how many years he's removed from high school. Maybe he, too, one day can win an NBA Summer League championship ring. That's his goal, that and to win the lawsuit that he's filed against John Morant. No lawsuits that I'm aware of with Trey Wallace of OutKick.com.
He just covers them.
He covers a lot of lawsuits. Trey, how you doing? Are you excited not to have to talk about an NBA Summer League championship?
Armando Salguero wouldn't have done that.
I despise the NBA, and I love Armando. So
Same.
we're all good in the same price. There's no lawsuits or anything going on right now. We're good. We're just getting a bunch of dumb text messages from all this investigation. So I'm loving every minute of it.
Trey, there's
Give me
not
a data dump.
There's not a ton of headlines being made by coaches or players so far. I feel like everyone has kind of followed the script of not wanting to upset the apple cart, so to speak, at this SEC Media Days. Has that continued to be the case with teams that have spoken today?
Chad, I mean, Kentucky, Mark Stoops had a perfect opportunity to rattle the Tennessee fan base today when he was asked point blank, hey, you remember those comments you made in 2021 about, we knew what was going on at Tennessee under Jeremy Pruitt? He walked that back today. He pretty much said, well, that was 2 years ago. It's hard to remember that type of stuff. It is what it is. That's what he said. He had a chance to be the heel today. It's not like, what, Jeremy Pruitt's going to come and defend himself here? No. So he had a chance. He didn't. Billy Napier, look, we're just talking about quarterbacks with Billy Napier, and they don't have one. I just posted an article a second ago. Right now, they're in the dogfight between who they're going to go with, Jack Miller or Graham Mertz. And if they can't figure this thing out, they can't find a guy, they're going to end up back in Las Vegas or the end of the season last year. So I don't like what Florida is dealing with right now when it comes to the quarterback situation. But I agree with you that there's not a lot of breaking news. There's a lot more. We're getting in depth with the players on certain things. And I think that's been my biggest takeaway so far from this is that, look, the biggest thing too is, guys, we can break news any day of the week and whatnot. I wasn't expecting like any earth-shattering, nothing like that to come out this week. But I will say, it's not like the Pac-12 media days that's going to happen on Friday, media day on Friday, where a lot of people, and I talked to a couple people around here that were going to head out to Vegas because they thought the Pac-12 would announce a television deal. They're not. And the SEC is sitting in a nice spot right now. You've got some teams that are down. You got a television contract you don't have to worry about. You got Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference next year. There's not a lot of that news out there that maybe spices people up. But I will say that these players have been really good about opening up around here.
Trey Wallace with us. OutKick.com is where you can find his coverage from the SEC and more. Big Ten coming up next week. Trey, so Georgia was demanding a retraction. They get it and then some today from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on a report that was into a recent investigation on the program's handling of sexual abuse allegations with players and recruits. The AJC releases this correction or corrections, plural, the day after Kirby Smart in Georgia hits Radio Row, maybe not Radio Row, hits SEC Media Days. That's also right on time because it's not nearly getting the attention that it would have 24 hours ago. Is that also Georgia's doing?
I don't think that's Georgia's doing. Because Georgia went out of their way to put together a 9-page letter demanding a retraction on the story.
But did Kirby talk about it yesterday, though?
No, he didn't talk about it. I didn't hear him talk about it.
Yeah, me either.
But he talked about a little bit of culture type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying overall, I don't think it was Georgia saying, hey, AJC, hold back till we get out of town. They're not going to do that. They're embarrassed enough. They had to go back and fix a couple paragraphs in their story, and that story was so long, so I didn't have time. I was listening to Billy Napier. That's how crazy it was, guys. Like, I'm sitting here listening to Billy Napier. AJC playing this perfectly. Billy Napier's up there speaking. AJC drops this this story.
And they fired the reporter.
Right, and they fired a reporter, Alan Judd, who'd been there 25 years. And I did a little research on him. Football wasn't his go-to thing, but investigative reporting was. I don't know how much. I don't know what the definition to some people of what retraction is. Like, they didn't retract the story. They changed a few of the details in the story. Now, I know that might seem like a cop-out.
Correcting,
it's really
not
not. Like,
retracting.
They didn't take the whole story away.
Yeah.
But they found that Alan Judd, the reporter, did not do a good enough job ethically that they would keep him. And here's another thing, too, and I might add to this. They even let Alan Judd give a comment about his exit and his time at the AJC in the story that the AJC put out. So is it harsh feelings? Was it UGA forcing this in a manner in the AJC saying, you know what, okay, you're forcing this. You put us in a horrible spot. We're going to let this guy who's been with us for 25 years, who we think did a pretty damn good job on the story. You guys found a couple little bitty things. We're gonna let him give a statement, though. Like, that's what stood out to me most about that today, guys, is that, and you know this, if I were to come out and print a story that was completely fabricated, I made up quotes, blah, 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 I would be fired by OutKick. I would not be given the opportunity to give a statement in OutKick's release on why I got fired. So that's why a part of me thinks AJC in Georgia, not as bad as maybe they think it is, and that's why maybe it was released today during Billy Napier and not during Kirby Smart. I don't know.
Yeah.
Got to read in the small
crazy timing on that, and we can certainly speculate on why the timing is what it was and not a day ago, and who that benefits. Because I think part of me is thinking it may have benefited Kirby Smart even yesterday to have that out, that they were right in demanding a retraction to that story, which would have been a positive headline. Trey, you can read Trey Wallace's work, all of it, OutKick.com, as he's covering SEC Media Days for us at the Grand Hyatt in Nashville. Trey, thanks so much, man. We'll talk to you again, hopefully tomorrow.
Guys, I look forward to a big day tomorrow, and hope you have a great rest of the show. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Trey will be at the party tonight, too. He'll be joining us here at 6th and Peabody for that. Interesting statement on Mark Stoops with a chance to clarify statements he's made about Tennessee. Maybe we'll ask him about that. We are scheduled in the next segment at some point to hopefully be joined live by Kentucky head coach Mark Stoops from our broadcast spot over at SEC Media Days at the Grand Hyatt. Looking forward to that. And, oh, by the way, there is one of the 5 quarterbacks that are at SEC Media Days making the rounds right now, and no one's talking about that quarterback or that team. Which quarterback and team? We'll tell you when we come back.
Of male advantage plaguing women's sports, it only recently came to light, I feel like, for so many, including myself. I was really only became aware of this when I was slapped across the face with it in regards to Leah Thomas. But as you alluded to, this is something that you had experience of. You were well ahead of your time. 43 years ago, you saw this. And so would you be able to touch on what that experience looked like competing against the East Germans?
And we would have East German athletes turning up to things like the Olympics, and we'd never, ever seen them before. And they would literally arrive and smash world records. They looked and sounded like, very masculine. They had deep voices, very large Adam apple, bad skin, through no fault of their own. I've never had a problem with these individuals. They were pawns of a horrible system. The people I have a big problem with is the IOC. And they allowed this to happen for 20 years. They even had East German doctors sitting on international doping panels. So every time we came up with a way to try and catch them, they would find a way to avoid being caught. And this was allowed to go on for 2 decades. So imagine the number of females that missed out. However, those females only missed out at international competitions, and they predominantly missed out in swimming, track and field, and rowing. What we've got now is 10 times worse, because this is happening across every single sport, at every single level, in every single country. You know, so I've been pushing very hard to say, right, we need to have a female classification, however that looks. Me, ideally, I'd love to bring back sex tests. And then an open and inclusive category so that everyone is still welcome in sport. Because just like you, I'm sure, you want people to do sport. You know, you want people to be physically active, to be healthy, because it helps us, both our body and our minds, you know, and in a world at the moment with mental health, particularly in young girls, through the roof, we need people to be physically active. So it's the last thing in the world I would ever want to do is to ban anyone from sports. I just want to protect the opportunities for people that are biologically female to have equal chance of being able to win medals, put successes onto their onto their CV going forward, get university scholarships, get places on teams, you know, be proud of records that they set, whatever it is. Females are worthy of equal opportunity. We are not second-class citizens, and I'm not prepared to sit back and pretend that we are. So,
amen. Oh my gosh, it's so true. There is no compromise for women. There is nothing that we should have to give up to ensure that trans athletes can compete. But that being said, trans athletes shouldn't be banned from sports. Of course not. And that's something that we see in the States a lot, especially in regards to state legislature being pushed. The opposition, they always say this is an anti-trans bill that bans trans athletes from competing. And that's simply not true. I love how you mentioned it equips people with the right information, with effective messaging, how to communicate about it, what to do. Really powerful. You mentioned in your book, you had a quote, I think it's from Cynthia Millen, and it says, bodies compete against bodies, gender identities don't swim, which is, that's the basis of the argument.
How do we marshal feelings? It's ridiculous. You know, if we turn around and say that we're going to accept a feeling that says someone can feel like a male or a female depending on their feeling, not the reality of their body, where does that stop? You know, what's the next feeling that's going to trump a reality? And we're not doing our kids any favors by not dealing with the truth. You know, it's by telling young children that they're going to be able to change sex when they're not. They're going to have to take medication for the rest of their life. They're going to have to do things to their bodies which will probably shorten their lives.
One of the top college football insiders with us now on Hot Mike with Hutt and Withrow across the OutKick network, Andy Staples of the On3 network. Quite the change.
A lot of networks.
There are a lot of networks.
Just colliding.
On3 is colliding with everything right now.
Seriously, just a giant comet coming through the universe right now.
A tree with a lot of branches. That's right.
That's exactly right. No, it has been fun. I've been with the company, about 2.5 weeks now.
Yeah.
And, it's great working with people who, this is what we do. We cover college football. That's it. And like the other place I've been, obviously Sports Illustrated, The Athletic, everybody's really good, but you're covering every sport. So some people like the NFL, some people like MLB. Everybody I work with cares deeply about college football.
Yes.
And it's their favorite sport. And it's a lot of fun.
I want to see where you come down on this, because we were chatting with Greg Sankey, and his address on Monday, and I just straight up told him, I'm like, I don't get the sense what you had to say was very encouraging in regards to name, image, likeness. Mm-hmm. With all of your sources, all the coaches you talk to off the record, around the country, not just here, is that the number one topic? And if so, are we all wasting our time based on the fact that Greg Sankey is telling us over the last year, hey, we need federal legislation? We've heard that before, and yet here we go again talking about it, wishing and hoping upon a star.
Well, I'm not wishing and hoping. What business on earth thinks it's a good idea to go ask the federal government to tell them how to do their business?
Well, the fact that they're having to do that, though, tells me
they don't have to do that. This is the thing. If they would just stop worrying about it, it would all level out.
Would it level out if we just see the super conference happen?
It could. That's one way to do it. But here's the thing. If they keep pushing like this, what they don't want, what Greg Sankey doesn't want, what the presidents don't want, the coaches don't care. The coaches just want to know what the rules are, and they're not worried about anything else.
How many wins they need.
Yeah, exactly. So what the the people in charge want is for them to not be employees. Well, if they keep pushing this hard, they're going to make them employees. They will be made employees. They will, and here's the thing. That's probably better for those schools if you think about it, because what would the weakest union in sports be? A college football players union, because it's not as small. Like the NBA players union is super powerful because there's only there's only a few hundred guys. In college football players union, most of the people are like, yeah, we'll take whatever we can get.
So with all of that in mind, who's leading it though?
Well, that's the bigger question. There have been people trying to set one up for 15 years. And so it could be the collectives. You see the collectives now coming together.
And then from college.
Exactly, yeah.
But from the college football perspective, who's leading that?
Oh, that's the best part. No one. There's never anyone in charge.
Right? Could Sankey just say,
not if he's continuing to try to bring them into the past. The world he's wishing for is never coming back. So he needs to understand that and move on.
Why is he wishing for it, though? I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Because that's what his presidents tell him to wish for.
Yeah, they like it the way that it was.
Yeah.
I think the key now, Andy, is let's make sure that it doesn't die forever.
It's not going to die. What is dying? The ratings are higher than ever.
It's not going to.
Yeah.
What would die is union is that if it goes to the federal government. The federal government could see to it that a lot of things would die. Not the top teams, not the top conferences, right? But a lot of other things could go away.
What would go away? Tell me, specifically. Humor me with specifics.
I think that if it becomes straight business at all levels, you're going to have some scholarship opportunities at lower levels probably go away.
Why?
If it's too expensive.
It's not too expensive.
Okay.
The Division II exists. They give scholarships.
Yeah.
They don't make any money.
Okay.
Division III exists. They have football teams. They don't give scholarships.
Then why is it some problem, existential crisis
it's
that
not.
Greg Sankey talks about?
That's the thing. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
They're acting like it's this huge problem. This may be as good as it ever gets. Like, yes, if you make them employees, there are all kinds of things you got to deal with, workers' compensation, blah, blah, blah. The CBA that you could get would allow you to have actual rules that you could enforce. But really, if you think about it, you should leave it like this. They don't have to be employees right now. They are making money. The market is taking care of it.
Yeah.
Like, people love the games. All of the idiots who said, well, I'm not going to watch to make any money.
Well, they're going to keep watching.
You watched.
Well, okay.
We've seen it.
Then what is the problem the presidents have if that's who Sankey's hearing from?
Because they're old people who don't like change.
Greg Sankey reacts, right? He reacts to problems.
Yeah, they're old people who don't like things to change.
Yeah.
Which, look, it's been a great scam for a long time where you had absolute power and you could keep all the money. But it's not going to work that way anymore.
Does Nick Saban fall into the category of old guys who don't like things to change?
No, Nick Saban.
When he continues to preach about, we just need to know the rules. We just want to know the rules. That's all we want to know.
Okay. That sentence right there is the key. All Nick Saban, he does not care what the rules are. Now, he would like you to make rules that are advantageous to him. But however you make the rules, he just wants to make sure they apply evenly. And then he'll figure out the best way to make them advantageous. Think about the oversigning thing and all that. All the rules they made to handicap Nick Saban. He overcame all of them.
Yeah.
He figured it out. And this is what drives him crazy is it's hard to figure it out when you don't exactly know what the rules are, or they keep changing, or they're unevenly distributed. In this case, they are unevenly distributed because there are a bunch of different state laws. So that's where Nick Saban falls on this. Is like he just wants you to. He doesn't care if it's their employees and it's a CBA. He just wants to know what the system is.
He doesn't want Texas to have better state NIL laws than Alabama.
Correct.
Or other places where he's
And
going.
here's the other part about this particular system. He can't create more rich people in the state of Alabama. The state of Texas will always have more rich people than the state of Alabama because the state of Texas has more people than the state of Alabama. And so it makes it harder for him to solve that problem. If he knew the rules and if everybody had the same rules, it would make it easier for him to at least pinpoint, here's what I got to do to fix this. So I go back and forth about, okay, how much longer is he going to coach? I firmly believe Nick Saban with a problem to solve is the most dangerous form of Nick Saban if you're another team. And he feels like he's trying to figure some things out right now. And that, I think that gives him energy. I don't think, I think a lot of people look at it and go, oh, well, he's going to get tired of this. I actually think the problem-solving aspect of it energizes him.
What's the main lesson, main takeaway from the Pat Fitzgerald saga? Is it from the administration side when you look at it and how they mishandled it, or maybe you think they handled it correctly? Is it with Fitzgerald? What is the big takeaway?
Just pay attention. That's all it is. I mean, if you're the administration, pay attention. If the coaches pay attention to what's going on. You know, be aware of what's happening in your program, in your locker. You look at that whole situation, no one is denying the accusations. But also no one is denying the finding in the investigative report that Pat Fitzgerald didn't know what was going on. I would argue that you didn't know is a problem too.
Yeah.
And I would also argue that what was going on specifically, like you try to do that at most SEC schools, you're going to have a senior getting
anywhere
stabbed. Like,
yeah.
Like I know this is probably not a popular thing to say, and probably sounds, you know, unsympathetic and uncouth, but maybe that's why they sucked. If they're doing stuff like that.
That is a great point.
But also because
and that they had guys who would just accept it and take it and do it.
But also, like, I don't buy that he didn't know, because coaches are so paranoid about
everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
They've got someone reporting back to them on the tenor and the tone of the locker room.
Right. And
at all times.
I'm just going by the report they did, which did not cast Pat Fitzgerald in a very favorable light.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like they were trying overly hard to protect him.
I agree.
But based on what they found, they say he didn't know. So I'm going to take that at face value until somebody proves to me something different. But that whole situation was weird, and I contend that if it hadn't been Pat Fitzgerald, who is essentially, you know, Northwestern's version of Steve Spurrier, or, you know, the greatest player who's also the best coach in the school's history, like anybody else, they would have taken his record the last 2 years into account and said, this is an excuse for us to fire you for free.
Yes.
And we're going to do that. And that's what would have happened at most of the schools in the rest of the Big Ten and the schools in the SEC and the school, like ACC, Big 12 schools. It would have been the same situation where they'd have gone, oh, now we have a way where we can fire this guy for free. We don't have to pay his buyout. By not doing that, by doing the 2-week suspension thing first, they put themselves in a weird spot. I mean, I think they're going to have to pay him some money too.
That's a big jump.
Is there a chance that Anthony Richardson with the Colts could make the seat hotter for Billy Napier this year?
So
if he has a great rookie year?
There's one way that happens. And
you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, there's one way that happens, and it's if, one, I don't think the Colts have any intention of starting Anthony Richardson this year. Right now, I think that the idea is to start Gardner Minshew.
At least in the start,
let Richardson. But we watch the NFL a lot. We know the best laid plans, especially with quarterbacks, don't always work out because there's very large people who are hitting them very frequently. And so if Anthony Richardson were to come in and be great right away in the NFL, it would look very bad.
Coupled with
Florida.
really bad things for Florida.
Right, right. And that's the thing. Now,
is the expectation really bad things at Florida this year? I feel like the expectations are very low.
It's really medium things, I think, is what people are. Nobody's really expecting greatness. I think what people would like to see is competence. And so that's the other part. If Graham Mertz has a good season at Florida, where he didn't, you know, he was not that great at Wisconsin, but if he can be an adequate quarterback at Florida, I think people look at it and go, oh, okay, maybe it just Anthony and Billy's offense didn't quite fit together. But if Anthony plays and plays well at the higher level, it will look very bad in Gainesville. So that's the thing with Florida is I don't think anybody's expecting them to compete for the East title, compete for the SEC. What people want to see is, can they continue beating out good SEC programs for recruits, which is something that they have started doing recently? And then are their young players the ones who are leading the way or have the best potential or the most promise? If you're at the end of the season and you've been a little bit frisky against the really good teams, and that's the situation, everybody's happy. If you got blown out by Georgia, if you got blown out by LSU, if you didn't look like you belonged on the field with them, that's a different story. But here's the thing. I think it would be $31 million or something if they wanted to fire Billy Napier. They are not firing Billy Napier after this season. So he's going to have some time to make that work. But, yeah, the Anthony Richardson thing is really interesting to me. After watching him play for a season, I certainly wouldn't think that you'd want to throw him into the fire in the NFL. I would think you'd want to bring him along fairly slowly because obviously the potential is there. There aren't humans walking around like that. But he may need just more time to be ready. I don't know that you want to throw him in as a rookie because we've seen rookies get thrown in there and they just, they never recover from those really big, strong, fast people coming at you so fast, and genius defensive coordinators who have nothing but time to come up with ways to stop
And they're losing for the first time.
Exactly.
A lot of them are.
Well, Anthony Richardson lost to Vanderbilt and lost to Kentucky and lost to Tennessee. So he's had, unfortunately, some experience there.
No doubt. Andy Staples, our guest. In 3 years, what would you bet we're talking about with Deion Sanders in Colorado? Where are we with that program based on
is he still at Colorado?
How we view?
I think they'll be better. I think they will be better. I'm not predicting any miracles this season. Like better, given what he took over. Is like 3 or 4 wins. But I also don't know. I think it's such a reclamation project that I don't think it'll be this incredibly fast turnaround, which would then in turn get him hired.
But in the on-3 lane, is he dominant? Is he pissing off coaches at the highest level of recruiting because he's either tampering behind the scenes in the transfer portal or he's taking away guys that no one thought he would be able to bring to Colorado?
He has got their attention, and I'd say that's a good thing for Colorado, that he has gotten their attention by what you said, getting players that, you're not supposed to get those players. Like, I remember when Hugh Freeze was at Ole Miss and he signs Laramie Tunsil and Robert Conducci. It's like, you're not supposed to get those players. Well, it's okay if they sign with Alabama, and it's okay if they sign with Ohio State, but God forbid they sign with Ole Miss.
No one blinks if it's Alabama or Georgia or any of those programs.
Right. So I find that part funny. But, again, it's a higher level, and to just completely flip the roster like this is very hard with the big guys. Like, you can do it with the skill guys. It's the big guys that are the problem, that there just aren't as many good offensive and defensive linemen at the Power 5 level available in the portal.
Andy Staples, always great. Really enjoying the debut of the show as well.
It's been fun, and so it comes out 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central every night on YouTube. And it also, if you don't want to look at me, I understand. It's on every podcast platform. So if you want to, listen to during your commute, watch on demand, anything you want.
Two biggest social media giants, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, are set to battle it out, and I'm here on Broadway asking people who they put their money on. Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, they're gonna fight each other. Who do you think's gonna win?
I think Mark's got him.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Because he's a man.
Okay, and Elon Musk isn't?
Oh, well, of course, he's got money.
Okay.
He's got money. Money, well, money's money.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg in a fight?
I don't know. I'm going to go with Musk.
Why?
It just seems like he's a little bit younger, a little bit smarter.
You just got a good feeling about him?
I got a good feeling.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Musk.
Why?
He trains. That guy's going to beat his
But Mark Zuckerberg is actually training jiu-jitsu for 9 months.
Not happening. Elon Musk all day.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think?
He has no soul. I mean, I think he's definitely just going to no holds barred.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. I feel like he's stronger and smarter.
Oh, Elon Musk.
All the way? Why?
All the way. He's an animal. Think about it.
Mark Zuckerberg's been training for 9 months jiu-jitsu. You think Elon Musk can take him?
Yeah, I think he can take him.
Elon, that oh God, stop playing with Elon. Elon really do this out here, for real.
I hope Elon
Really? Why do you think so?
got better ideas.
Zuckerberg's like 5'7", 155. Musk is 6'1", 190. But Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, who's going to win in a fight?
Oh, Elon Musk. No doubt.
Why do you think so?
He's the GOAT. I've been seeing all the Twitter handles and all the talk, and I'm on Elon Musk's side. I'm ready for them to get in the WWE ring and then come off the top rope. That's what I want to see. I want to see a people's elbow to Mark Zuckerberg.
If one was more likely to be a lizard or a robot, who would it be?
Elon. Elon.
Okay.
I think Mark Zuckerberg will win.
Why do you think that?
Because I think he already trains MMA. So he's got like the prior experience and stuff. I mean, they're both billionaires, so they have the opportunity to get the best training. But I think Mark Zuckerberg will pull away with the win.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think so?
Because he's bigger.
Bigger, okay, but Mark Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Do you think that matters?
No.
Because Elon Musk's he's gonna learn and train, right? So
Yeah. I think he'll handle Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg's a lizard, right? So
he's a lizard, but does that help him?
I don't think so. I think Elon will squash the lizard.
Cage fight. Elon Musk is mental, so Elon Musk.
All it is just he's mental. He's mentally crazy. So
He just wouldn't care, would he?
Okay.
He'd just absolutely go for it. I think Zuckerberg would be a bit more refrained.
Okay.
If that should ever happen, which I doubt, but you never know, it'd be entertaining.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Elon Musk.
Why?
Because my dad is in love with Elon Musk.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to go with Zuckerberg. I mean, Threads just came out, so.
Who do you think would win?
Zuck.
Why do you think so?
He's not a real human. He's a robot.
So he'll use that to his advantage.
Yeah, and all the Krav Maga stuff too. Yeah.
Who do you think would win in a fight, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk.
Why do you think Elon Musk?
I think Elon's smarter. Works with robots, so like maybe he built a robot to fight for him.
But what if Mark Zuckerberg is a robot?
Oh wow. Then I might have to change my answer.
Who do you think's gonna win?
Me.
We're back. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network and our downtown Nashville 6th and Peabody studios with Old Smoky Moonshine, Yeehaw Beer. Big story out there, not just in college football, but nationally, has been Pat Fitzgerald and Northwestern. And then also what's going on with Jim Foster at Northwestern, the baseball coach who was fired for promoting an atmosphere of bullying within the program and a lot of other issues. So now Northwestern and their president, Michael Schill, has decided to launch 2 more external investigations into the athletic department and what's being done to prevent this, what's happening within the athletic department, to see if they can stop some of these things from happening. Hutton, though, I read this, and I can't help but remember just a week and a half ago where they concluded a 6+ month investigation into, and this was external, into the football program and allegations of hazing. And they determined at the end of it that while some things happened, Pat Fitzgerald, we can't prove that he knew about it, so we're going to suspend him for 2 weeks. Then they come back 4 days later and decide, nope, forget about it. We're going to fire him. And I'm not sure what 2 more investigations will do.
Well, the 2 investigations, though, are not in the past. It's more about how they're going to handle this in the future. So part 1 of the 2 external investigations that they've now said they're doing, one is just to detect issues moving forward, unlike they did in the past, and how they're going about doing that with their process. And if there's a plan in place, let's see it, let's dissect it, and if not, they're going to form one. Number 2 is the culture within the athletic program as a whole. They're going to take a look and peel back the curtain on the AD on down. And does that match up with the academic requirements and expectations? And just their mission statement, I guess, which tells me that it's still going to point back to the academic aspect of Northwestern, which is top tier. It's great. But that's also why you can win 3 or 4 games and it's totally fine there. And more or less, Chad, I view this as they are coming up with a way to define the job description of the current openings, both at football and at baseball within the program.
Yeah, and I think, Dan Dockich brought up a good point. They're also doing this to CYA because they're being sued. So they're doing this to show their due diligence in making sure they correct the problems because they also fired Pat Fitzgerald.
Yeah, but they're going to get sued either way.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, I think what they can show is in a lawsuit about you promoted this atmosphere, you allowed it. They can say, well, you can see all the steps we've taken that shows that we don't condone this atmosphere. We've taken steps to correct it in hopes that that can mitigate some of the possible damages within this lawsuit.
Yeah, it's also a CYA for Schill, who imposed the 2 weeks and then comes back 4 days later. Part of this, too, is the board of directors that he pointed to in that second statement, that over the week, he wanted, after reviewing this and hearing feedback, there had to be further action. And that was, there has to be something else underneath the surface of this as to why that report, that 6-month report, is not public. They have already said these 2 reports will be, but they don't have the 6-month report that's available for everyone to comb through. There has to be some details within that they overlooked from the very top, which would be Michael Schill, and why they made that leap from 2 weeks to terminated with cause. Again, that's common sense that tells me that. I don't have to jump to many conclusions. That there's a reason why they're not releasing their report, but they're already telling us they're going to release these 2 because it's more about the planning of the future than it is reviewing what they found.
It's also interesting what Andy Staples said, and he said up front, like, hey, this may sound uncouth or whatever, but maybe some of the stuff going on with the program is the reason they've sucked for so long and that they celebrate a 10-win season when it randomly and rarely happens because these are the types of guys that are coming into their program. Had not thought about that. I find the whole form of hazing just to be very strange more than anything else and not something I've ever encountered. Yes. But when we talk about this, we've heard from people in the YouTube chat or on Twitter that say, hey, I've seen worse than this happen in football locker rooms, and I've experienced this, this, and this, and it's not that big of a deal. And I'm thinking, that's odd. That's the one word that comes to mind is odd, if that's what's going on. And Andy Staples said it. Some SEC linemen might stab you if you tried to do some of these things to them. And that's the difference in culture there versus at Northwestern where this was allowed. So a lot of different ways to look at it. But regardless, I do think this is now maybe step one in figuring out what they are now moving forward as an athletic department.
And again, just looking at it from the very top of the mountain, they've admitted in firing Fitzgerald, they could not prove whether or not he knew or not. They've already said that. So they got to figure out why they couldn't prove that, right? Definitively. Even in his favor, they can't say that he didn't know for sure with certainty, but they can't say he did. And the other factor here too, Chad, that I think is the next layer to this. If in fact it's a culture thing that has been going on even while Fitzgerald was a position coach and not the head coach prior to 2006, if it's been every year, that means the current roster has players who were just hazed last year, and they have players that were hazed 2 or 3 years ago that then participated in the hazing, and they're playing for the coaches that were on the staff that should have known but apparently didn't, and their head coach was fired for it. And if they don't speak up now, why would you? Moving forward, now's the time, and it's been a long time based on how long this has gone on and everyone stepping forward now as opposed to staying silent. Now's the time to actually speak up rather than just say, oh, we got a lawyer up and we shouldn't say anything. It's the coaches that won't be saying anything.
Well, what's next for Pat Fitzgerald?
Who's the last one hazed is what he's on the roster.
And there are guys on this roster that have hazed, right, that are remaining.
Yes.
That have been doing it and have
but
done
we still
it probably
don't know
recently.
No names from players. That's also very intriguing to me.
That no one has turned state's witness completely to publicly
in all the stories,
names.
no one's specifically mentioning who's kind of the head honcho, Who's the Don of the locker room? If it's not Pat Fitzgerald, who is it? Is offensive lineman? If so, who carries the torch?
Is the offensive line coach that we had the former player on that mentioned a number of times?
Well, but there would be coaching turnover, though.
Yeah. There's a lot of questions still to be answered. I mentioned what happens with Pat Fitzgerald next. Here's what I think is going to happen with Northwestern football next. They're about to look like a team that went through the death penalty in a year or two. I mean, this is going to be bad.
Worse than one win?
All of these coaches are gone. It's going to be worse than Baylor with what happened to them when they had to start over with Matt Rule. They're going to have to start over. Deion Sanders is starting over right now at Colorado. It's going to look a lot like that. This is going to have to be built completely from the ground up. They're going to have a ton of transfers after this year. Guys have nowhere else to go right now. They're going to need to get rid of some people after 2 more investigations that they find to have done this. Some are going to have to be forced to leave. All of those coaches are probably going to be gone at the end of the year. New head coach, new coaching staff, starting from scratch. That is Northwestern football, and that is not fun to do in the Big Ten when you're already Northwestern.
But it's doable faster than I think I would have bet on. Bill O'Brien is case in point at Penn State. You know, he turned that corner fairly quickly, to his credit. He parlayed that into an NFL gig. And I think this goes back to this.
I think doing that at Penn State, though, is easier than at Northwestern.
Not based on what happened there with Jerry Sandusky. I mean, we're going to jump to scandal and cover-ups for years. I mean, that is vastly different than hazing that, did or did not happen and the coach did or did not know.
But remember with that story, they had that weird NCAA exemption where everyone was eligible to transfer from the program, and you had like USC coaches showing up on campus to recruit guys off the team. Well, in today's football, that's every day.
Sure.
Like everyone, if you want a Northwestern player, by all means, go get them. Right now, you could do that any day of the week. So there's going to be an enormous amount of roster turnover, I think, similar not to the Colorado extremes of what Deion Sanders wanted to do, but I think to a Penn State extreme of guys that leave. But it's going to be that bad.
I guess in comparing that, though, in the turnaround, Penn State got it right with who they brought in and who they hired. Is Northwestern going to determine, based on what they're doing, if they're doing it right, are they going with the younger, up-and-coming coach that's trying to prove that he's 35 years old, but he's ready to lead a program? Or are they going to have to find their version of Bill O'Brien and who's looking to come in and stabilize on what could be a final job before retirement, right?
Yeah.
That is a key part of this. But first and foremost, who's leading the university? Michael Schill, who knows if he wants to tack on a couple more external investigations before this is all said and done.
Well, what probably should happen and what ultimately happened at Penn State, I'm not comparing this to Sandusky and Penn State, but if you really want to start fresh, you really start fresh. And that is new president, new athletic director, new head coach, new staff. Michael Schill, this is an academic university first and foremost. We say that tongue-in-cheek with a lot of football schools. That's true at Northwestern. He could be the best president for academia in Northwestern history. I don't know. And if he is, his job is safe.
It is
but
tough
I think
to find.
I think you're going to be hard-pressed to say, you know what, we're going to keep Derek Gregg on, the guy who just hired Jim Foster, that we then had to fire, and the guy who oversaw the football program with Pat Fitzgerald, and no one ever knew a thing about it. I think after 2 more external investigations, if you come back with that determination, that's a hard one to sell, that you're going to have the same AD.
And, I mean, the other thing, too, considering when you mentioned the academic part of it, and you're right, name a Big Ten or an SEC program that is asking for a new stadium and they don't get it and they're nowhere close with the guy that would be the silhouette of Mr. Wildcat, Mr. Northwestern, Pat Fitzgerald. Prior to all this, he couldn't get it done. So that's not happening anytime soon. That goes to your point about what's priority versus what is normally priority and the money maker on campus, which is the football program.
So Dak Prescott is claiming, the story we talked about yesterday, that he's been misquoted. He reportedly gave a guarantee that I won't have 10 interceptions this year after having far more than that a year ago and not in a full season. Well,
15 and 12.
15 interceptions in 12 games a year ago. So the team website, this is really funny. The first report was from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. This was 6 days after he had a camp, an annual youth camp, and he had this quote, I won't have 10 interceptions this year. The Cowboys came back, sort of a retraction, and says what he said was, we won't have those tipped interceptions this year. Not 10 interceptions. Quote from Dak Prescott, do I blame those receivers? No. Mike McCarthy does an amazing job with the receivers. They know where the hell to be, why to be, and when they're getting looked at. That's going to be a big jump, I think. We won't have those tipped interceptions this year. And the reporter heard 10 interceptions. This is legitimately he was misquoted.
Either
Players
way,
and coaches claim all the time they've been misquoted. If this is true, he was misquoted.
Of all the stats we have and we keep up with, how is there not a stat for tipped interceptions? So Dak Prescott led the NFL in interceptions last year, and he did so by only playing in 12 games. Now, they won their fair share of games total. Dallas, very talented roster. But when you see who leads the league in interception, he made some really bad throws. But not every single interception was on him.
Right.
I would love to know the actual number and put that in context with how bad it actually was.
I have seen some, there are some analytics that have, and I don't know the exact phrase, but it's like, high risk target versus low risk in terms of interception.
Yeah.
And they can put
Catchable
a percentage
pass and all
on,
that.
They put a percentage on either the quarterback, the receiver, or someone else. Like as to they all go statistically to the quarterback, but you can look deeper into it and see which were really the quarterback's
Prescott's got to be much better.
Yes.
Much better, regardless of whatever number.
I don't know if it gets much better than today's show for us, to be honest. We'll always try to be better, but let's be honest. Today's show was pretty damn good. So we'll try to do better tomorrow, but probably won't be any better.
We'll live up to it.
Because we're really good anyways. We'll be back tomorrow.